Have you ever wondered if life exists beyond Earth? If somewhere far away, another mind is watching the same stars? Tonight on the Sleepy Brain Dose, we'll drift through calm science, exploring how life begins, evolves, and reaches across the quiet vastness of space. No rush, no noise, only gentle curiosity and the rhythm of thought. Stay with us until the end, and let your mind wander among the stars. When we look up at the night sky, it's natural to wonder whether we are alone. Every point of light, every faint shimmer in the darkness, could be a sun with its own planets, worlds that might breathe, move, or think in ways entirely different from our own. This question, are we alone in the universe, is one of the oldest and most persistent questions in human thought. It joins science, philosophy, and imagination in a single line of curiosity in this journey. We will explore what science truly means when it speaks of life. We will see how researchers define it, how they search for it beyond Earth, and why every discovery about distant worlds is, in some way, a mirror reflecting back to us. By the end of this episode, you will understand how scientists look for life elsewhere, not by chasing myths or miracles, but by following evidence, chemistry, and the quiet logic of nature. To begin, we must first accept a simple truth. We still don't have a final, universal definition of life. Biologists, chemists, and physicists use different criteria, each highlighting one facet of a broader mystery. Life, in scientific terms, is usually described as a system capable of growth, reproduction, response to stimuli, and adaptation through evolution. Yet this definition begins to blur as soon as we look more closely. Viruses, for instance, can replicate and evolve, but only by using a host's cellular machinery. They stand on the border between life and non-life, molecular entities wrapped in protein shells, carrying information, but lacking the energy systems of living cells. Some scientists view them as biological software, others as simplified parasites, and some as relics from a time when chemistry was becoming biology. The moment we try to draw a clear line, nature shows us how flexible and creative it can be. That ambiguity has deep consequences. When we search for life beyond Earth, we must first decide what we are actually searching for. Are we looking for living cells, or only for chemistry that might lead to them? Are we hoping to find complex ecosystems, or simply a single microbe, fossilized in stone or frozen in ice? These questions shape every telescope we build and every probe we send. Modern astrobiology is a young science. It grew from the recognition that the same physical laws govern the entire universe. The atoms in our bodies were forged in stars, and the molecules that sustain life, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, are among the most abundant in the cosmos. If the universe is rich in the raw materials of biology, perhaps life itself is not an exception, but a natural consequence of physics and chemistry repeated on many worlds. In the past decades, discoveries have steadily supported that idea. Organic molecules have been detected in comets, meteorites, and interstellar dust clouds. Some meteorites that fell to Earth contained amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, with isotopic patterns suggesting they formed in space rather than here on our planet. The Rosetta mission to Comet 67P revealed complex carbon chains drifting through the cold vacuum, while spectroscopic instruments have identified formaldehyde, methanol, and even more intricate compounds in the gas between stars. Each of these findings strengthens a quiet hypothesis. The universe might be chemically biased toward life. Under the right conditions, liquid water, a source of energy, and stable molecules, biology could emerge almost anywhere. Yet the right conditions are not easy to find or maintain. Planets orbit stars that vary in brightness and temperature. Atmospheres form and vanish. Magnetic fields protect or fail. And billions of years of cosmic change sculpt every surface. Earth's story reminds us how delicate the balance is. Our planet formed roughly 4.5 billion years ago, and within perhaps 500 million years, the first self-replicating molecules appeared. Fossilized stromatolites, layered structures built by microbial colonies, date back more than 3.4 billion years. Life, once begun, proved resilient beyond expectation, surviving asteroid impacts, volcanic winters, and dramatic shifts in temperature and atmosphere. This persistence suggests that, when the spark of life appears, it can adapt and endure through vast stretches of time to detect similar resilience elsewhere. Scientists look for 3 key signatures: liquid water, a source of energy, and elements like carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus. These are not arbitrary. Water acts as a universal solvent, enabling molecules to meet, react, and self-organize. Energy, whether from sunlight, geothermal heat, or chemical reactions, drives metabolism. And those essential elements form the complex networks of organic chemistry. Wherever these 3 factors coexist, life seems at least plausible. That is why Mars, Europa, and Enceladus attract such attention. Each shows evidence of water, past or present. Mars bears ancient riverbeds and minerals that form only in liquid water. Europa hides a global ocean beneath its frozen crust, warmed by tidal forces from Jupiter's gravity. Enceladus, a small moon of Saturn, vents plumes of water vapor and organic molecules from cracks in its icy surface. These are not merely poetic curiosities. They are genuine laboratories for understanding whether life can begin in environments far from sunlight, powered only by internal heat, beyond our solar system. The search expands to thousands of exoplanets, worlds orbiting distant stars. Using telescopes like Kepler, TESS, and the James Webb Space Telescope, astronomers now detect the faint dimming of starlight as planets pass in front of their suns. From those tiny variations, they infer size, orbit, and atmospheric composition. Some of these planets lie within the so-called habitable zone, where temperatures could allow liquid water to exist on the surface. It is here that the search for life becomes not only scientific, but philosophical. Every new discovery challenges our understanding of what is possible. Worlds with double suns, planets tidally locked so that one side is eternal day and the other eternal night. Gas giants with moons larger than Mercury. The diversity of the cosmos is beyond imagination. Yet even within this vastness, the same patterns appear. Chemistry organizes, energy flows, matter seeks equilibrium. Perhaps these are the universal rhythms of life itself. In the coming sections, we will explore these ideas in greater depth, from the origins of life on Earth to the search for biosignatures on distant worlds. We will visit the frozen oceans of Europa, the methane lakes of Titan, and the light of stars so far away that their photons began traveling before humans existed. We will examine the paradox of silence in a universe that seems built for communication. And we will see how modern instruments are now capable of detecting the chemical breath of alien ecosystems. Through it all, the tone of science remains patient. Astrobiology teaches humility. For every discovery we make, new questions arise. We have not yet found a single unambiguous sign of life beyond our planet, but we have learned that the universe is fertile with potential. The same physical constants, the same elements, the same mathematical laws appear everywhere we look. The difference between lifeless dust and living cell may be one of arrangement rather than substance. When you think about this, there is something profoundly peaceful in it. The idea that the cosmos does not divide us from the rest of matter, but includes us within its continuity. Life, in this view, is not a miracle imposed upon the universe, but a natural expression of it. Just as stars form from collapsing clouds and rivers carve their valleys, perhaps consciousness, too, is a process that arises wherever the conditions allow. As we continue, we will follow this thread from chemistry to planets, from telescopes to signals, and from evidence to meaning. Each step will bring us closer to understanding not only where life might exist, but why it exists at all. And whether we find it soon or never, the search itself, steady, patient, and open, reminds us that curiosity is one of the deepest forms of life we know. Before we can look for life beyond Earth, we must first understand what life actually is. At first glance, that may seem simple. After all, we can easily tell the difference between a stone and a living tree, between a river and a moving animal. Yet when scientists attempt to define life in objective, universal terms, they quickly find themselves entering a gray and intricate area. The boundaries blur, the categories overlap, and the definitions shift depending on which discipline is speaking. In biology, life is often described as a system capable of metabolism, growth, reproduction, and adaptation through evolution. This formulation captures the essence of what living systems do. They use energy to maintain their structure. They change over time, and they pass information forward. But this definition is functional rather than philosophical. It works for organisms we know, but it may fail for forms of existence that operate differently from those on Earth. For instance, a single bacterial cell fits this definition perfectly. It consumes energy, divides, and evolves. But what about viruses? They replicate, mutate, and even evolve under selective pressure, yet they cannot reproduce independently. They rely on hijacking the molecular machinery of a host cell. Some scientists classify them as non-living particles, biological entities that exist somewhere between chemistry and life. Others see them as essential players in the story of evolution, perhaps remnants of the first self-replicating molecules that once filled the oceans of early Earth. The challenge deepens when we consider even simpler systems, prions. For example, infectious protein structures that can induce other proteins to change their shape. They contain no DNA or RNA, no genetic material at all, yet they can spread, persist, and evolve new forms. Are they alive? Or are they merely patterns of chemistry repeating themselves across time? Each example forces us to reconsider the essence of life. Some scientists argue that life should not be defined by a single set of traits, but by a continuum, a scale that measures how far a system is from thermodynamic equilibrium, how effectively it maintains internal order in a universe that tends toward disorder. According to this view, life is not a category, but a process, the ongoing struggle of matter to stay organized. Against entropy. This thermodynamic perspective links biology with physics. A living system, like a flame or a vortex, exists because energy flows through it. But unlike a flame, life uses that energy to copy itself, to encode information, to build complexity from simplicity. From this angle, every living organism is a tiny island of order, sustained by constant exchange with its environment. When the exchange stops, order dissolves, and life ends. That interplay between order and chaos, information and energy, may hold the key to a deeper definition. In recent years, researchers in artificial life and systems biology have suggested that life can be understood as a self-maintaining network of chemical reactions. capable of evolution by natural selection. This definition, known as the NASA astrobiology standard, is pragmatic. It was created to guide missions that search for life elsewhere, not based on appearance, but on measurable properties. A rover or a probe cannot rely on intuition. It must detect chemical and energetic signatures that reveal whether a system is active, self-sustaining, and capable of change. Yet even that careful wording leaves gaps. Suppose we find an autonomous chemical network on another planet, one that cycles energy and maintains itself, but never reproduces. Would that qualify as life, or only as pre-life? Or imagine a planet where crystalline structures replicate and evolve according to environmental conditions. They might fulfill the formal criteria for evolution without being alive in any familiar sense. The more we explore these edge cases, the more we realize that our human-centered intuition may limit us. Life on Earth is carbon-based and water-dependent, but this could be just one instance among many possible chemistries. There could be forms of self-organization in solvents like methane or ammonia, or in environments where silicon replaces carbon as the framework for molecular complexity. The question, then, is not only what is life, but how universal is the pattern we call life. Some researchers use a more general concept. Living systems are those that process information. DNA, RNA, and proteins are seen as carriers and executors of information. Through feedback loops and error correction, life maintains a delicate balance between stability and variation. Too much stability, and evolution halts. Too much variation, and structure collapses. This dynamic equilibrium, sometimes called the edge of chaos, seems to be where living systems thrive. Information theory also gives rise to another insight. The genetic code of all known life is written in 4 letters, but the rules that govern it, replication, transcription, translation, are abstract. They could, in principle, be implemented in other media. Just as the same melody can be played on different instruments, the algorithm of life might exist in different physical forms. This idea fuels research into artificial life, where computer programs evolve in digital environments, mimicking the principles of natural selection. While these systems are not biological, they demonstrate that lifelike behavior can emerge from simple rules, provided there is variation, inheritance, and competition for limited resources. Defining life, therefore, becomes an act of mapping boundaries that shift with every new discovery. Some philosophers of science suggest that our difficulty in defining life mirrors the way we once struggled to define planet. The term had to evolve as our understanding grew from a handful of visible wanderers in the sky to a complex taxonomy of worlds. Similarly, life may not be a fixed category, but an evolving framework that adapts as we learn more about the universe. In astrobiology, this flexibility is vital. A rigid definition risks blinding us to forms of existence that do not resemble earthly biology. For this reason, many scientists now prefer to talk about biosignatures rather than life itself. A biosignature can be any observable property, a molecule, a pattern, a disequilibrium in atmospheric gases, that indicates biological processes may be at work. By focusing on process instead of form, we expand our ability to recognize unfamiliar kinds of living systems. Consider methane, for instance. On Earth, a large portion of atmospheric methane is produced by microorganisms called methanogens. But methane can also arise from purely geological activity, such as serpentinization, when water reacts with certain rocks. Thus, detecting methane on Mars or an exoplanet does not prove life exists. It merely invites a closer look. Science proceeds cautiously, separating what is possible from what is probable. There is also an emotional component to this quest. Humanity has a natural bias toward seeking reflections of itself. When we imagine aliens, we often give them familiar traits: eyes, limbs, language, even emotions. Yet the universe may contain forms of organization that challenge all such expectations. Some might be microscopic, existing only as patterns in the chemistry of an atmosphere. Others could be vast and slow, evolving over geological timescales, perceiving time in ways we cannot imagine. The point of defining life is not to confine it, but to prepare our minds to recognize it when we see it. Ultimately, the attempt to define life reveals as much about us as about nature. We are pattern-seeking beings who try to make sense of continuity in a world of constant change. Life, in every known form, balances that tension. It resists entropy, yet it depends on it. It preserves information, yet it transforms it. Perhaps this balance, the dance between persistence and transformation, is the universal essence of what we call living dot. As scientists refine their theories, they also refine their instruments. Future missions to Mars, Europa, and Enceladus carry sensors designed to detect complex organic molecules and chemical gradients, signs that a system may be maintaining itself. Telescopes analyze the light from distant planets, searching for imbalances in gases like oxygen, carbon dioxide, and methane that could indicate metabolic activity. Each step forward begins with a definition, and each definition is a hypothesis to be tested. We may never arrive at a single, absolute answer. Life might be too varied, too contextual, to fit within a single sentence. But that uncertainty is not a failure. It is a reflection of the universe's diversity. To define life is to participate in the very process we seek to understand, a process of continual adaptation, revision, and renewal. And as we continue this exploration, the next question naturally emerges. If life requires such delicate balance, how did it begin in the first place? How did non-living chemistry, through time and chance, cross the threshold into the first living cell? That is where our journey will lead next, into the origins of life on Earth, and the first spark of biology within a young and restless planet. Every discussion about life beyond our planet begins, in some way, with life here, on the only world where it is known to exist. Understanding how life emerged on Earth is one of the deepest scientific questions and one of the most challenging. It connects geology, chemistry, physics, and biology into a single long chain of cause and effect, stretching back more than 4 billion years. Our planet formed around 4.5 billion years ago, when dust and gas surrounding the young sun began to clump together under gravity. The early Earth was not a calm place. It was hot, unstable, and repeatedly bombarded by asteroids and comets. Its surface was molten, its atmosphere dense with volcanic gases, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, water vapor, methane, and ammonia. There was no oxygen to breathe, no ozone layer to protect against ultraviolet light, and no oceans yet. Only scattered pools of liquid water forming as the crust slowly cooled dot in such an environment. The chemistry of life had to begin from simplicity. Atoms combined into molecules. Molecules formed larger structures. And at some point, matter began to organize itself in ways that could store and use energy. That transition from chemistry to biology is what scientists call abiogenesis. It does not require a single miraculous event, but a long sequence of natural steps that collectively cross the boundary between the non-living and the living. Several hypotheses describe how this might have happened. The most famous early experiment came in 1953, when Stanley Miller and Harold Urey at the University of Chicago attempted to recreate the conditions of early Earth in a glass apparatus. They filled it with gases thought to resemble the primitive atmosphere, methane, ammonia, hydrogen, and water vapor, and exposed it to continuous electrical sparks to simulate lightning. After just a few days, the liquid inside the chamber turned pink. Analysis showed that it contained several amino acids, the building blocks of proteins. This experiment proved a profound idea. Under plausible early Earth conditions, organic molecules could form spontaneously from simple inorganic substances. Later variations of the experiment, using different mixtures of gases and energy sources, produced not only amino acids, but also sugars, lipids, and nucleobases, the components of RNA and DNA. Although modern research suggests that the early atmosphere was less reducing than Miller and Urey assumed, the principle remains. Nature can synthesize the ingredients of life without intervention. The next question was where these reactions might have taken place. For a long time, scientists imagined shallow, warm ponds rich in sunlight, sometimes called the primordial soup. In these ponds, evaporation, concentration, and ultraviolet energy could have driven complex reactions. Yet sunlight also destroys fragile molecules. Many researchers now believe the more likely setting was at the bottom of the ocean. Around hydrothermal vents. These vents, discovered in the late 1970s along the mid-ocean ridges, emit superheated water rich in minerals such as iron and sulfur. Around them thrive dense communities of organisms that rely not on sunlight but on chemosynthesis, using chemical reactions to generate energy. This discovery was revolutionary. It showed that life can exist in complete darkness, powered only by the internal heat of the planet. The minerals around hydrothermal vents can catalyze reactions, form natural compartments, and maintain gradients of temperature and chemistry, all of which are conditions favorable for prebiotic chemistry. Among the most studied structures are alkaline hydrothermal vents, such as those found in the Lost City hydrothermal field in the Atlantic Ocean. They produce porous chimneys of calcium carbonate, filled with microscopic channels where warm, mineral-rich fluids mix with cooler seawater. Within those channels, natural membranes can form, allowing ions and molecules to accumulate. This environment provides exactly the kind of energy gradient and compartmentalization that early life might have needed. Some scientists believe that the first cell-like structures, protocells, could have originated in such settings, gradually developing the ability to harness energy and replicate. Protocells are theoretical precursors to living cells, tiny droplets of molecules enclosed by thin membranes. Laboratory experiments have shown that under the right conditions, simple fatty acids can spontaneously form membranes around droplets of water, creating structures that grow and divide. When combined with self-replicating molecules, these protocells could represent the earliest step toward life as we know it. This brings us to the question of genetic information. Life, even in its simplest form, requires a way to store instructions and transmit them during replication. Today, that role is played by DNA. But DNA depends on proteins for its replication, and proteins, in turn, are produced by information encoded in DNA. To explain how this cycle could begin, scientists proposed the RNA world hypothesis. RNA, or ribonucleic acid, can both store information and catalyze chemical reactions. In other words, it is both a carrier and a performer, capable of copying itself and of facilitating reactions that build more complex molecules. Laboratory research has demonstrated that short strands of RNA can form spontaneously under certain conditions, and that some RNA sequences, called ribozymes, can act like enzymes. Over time, such molecules could have evolved greater stability and complexity, eventually giving rise to DNA-based life. Got another idea suggests that life began not in the oceans, but on mineral surfaces, such as clays or iron-sulfur crystals. These surfaces can attract and organize organic molecules, concentrating them and promoting reactions that would be unlikely in dilute solutions. Iron-sulfur minerals, for example, can facilitate redox reactions similar to those used by modern cells to harvest energy. In this view, life may have started as a network of chemical cycles anchored to rock surfaces, gradually developing into independent organisms. Adding to the complexity, comets and meteorites may also have played a role. During the early stages of planetary formation, countless impacts delivered not only water, but also organic compounds synthesized in space. Some meteorites, such as the famous Murchison meteorite that fell in Australia in 1969, contain more than 70 types of amino acids, as well as sugars and nucleobases. These findings suggest that the early Earth received a continuous rain of prebiotic material from the cosmos, enriching its chemistry and perhaps seeding the reactions that led to life. Although no single theory explains every step, most scientists agree that life's emergence was a gradual, multi-stage process. First came organic molecules, then networks of reactions that could maintain themselves. Finally, structures capable of storing and transmitting information. At some point, perhaps 3.8 to 4.0 billion years ago, this chemistry crossed the threshold into true biology. The earliest microfossils and isotopic traces of life in ancient rocks from Greenland and Australia support this timeline. Once established, life adapted quickly. Microbial mats formed in shallow seas, trapping sediments and creating layered structures known as stromatolites, some of which still exist today in places like Shark Bay in Western Australia. These early ecosystems used sunlight and chemical energy to grow, gradually transforming the planet's surface and atmosphere. The most dramatic transformation came with photosynthesis, the process by which organisms use sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into sugars, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. This innovation, developed by cyanobacteria around 2.5 billion years ago, changed Earth forever. Oxygen accumulated in the atmosphere, triggering what scientists call the Great Oxidation Event. This made possible the evolution of complex cells and, eventually, multicellular life. From a biochemical perspective, it was one of the most consequential events in planetary history. When we trace this story, a remarkable pattern emerges. Life did not arise through a single stroke of chance, but through the patient work of natural processes. Each stage prepared the conditions for the next, from atoms to molecules, from chemistry to replication, from simplicity to complexity. The chain is unbroken, and every cell alive today carries the chemical memory of those ancient beginnings. The origin of life remains an open field of inquiry. Scientists continue to explore how molecules organize themselves, how energy gradients drive complexity, and how environmental cycles contribute to stability. New techniques in molecular biology and planetary science allow us to recreate and test scenarios that once belonged only to speculation. Whether life began in deep oceans, on mineral surfaces, or in cosmic dust, each path converges on the same realization. The laws of nature are sufficient to give rise to life. There is a quiet beauty in that thought, that life is not an anomaly, but a possibility written into the fabric of the universe. Our planet happened to provide the right balance of conditions, but the chemistry itself is universal. If life could emerge here, it might also emerge elsewhere, given time and stability. And so, as we look beyond Earth, this story becomes our map. By understanding how life began here, we gain the tools to recognize it on other worlds. The next step in our journey leads outward, to the evidence of those same organic molecules scattered across the cosmos, carried by comets, meteorites, and interstellar dust. From the oceans of Earth, we turn our attention to the building blocks of life in space. When scientists study the origins of life, one of the most surprising discoveries is that the essential ingredients of biology are not unique to Earth. The same kinds of molecules that form the structure of living cells, amino acids, sugars, and organic compounds have been found scattered throughout the universe. This realization has transformed astrobiology. It suggests that the chemistry of life is not confined to a single planet, but woven into the larger fabric of cosmic evolution. The term organic molecule refers to any compound that contains carbon bonded to other elements such as hydrogen, oxygen, or nitrogen. On Earth, these molecules form the basis of all living systems. But long before life appeared, organic chemistry was already active among the stars. In the cold darkness of interstellar space, tiny dust grains float between stars, coated with ices made of water, carbon monoxide, methane, and ammonia. When exposed to ultraviolet light or cosmic rays, these ices undergo reactions that create increasingly complex molecules. Astronomers have detected hundreds of organic compounds in these regions, including formaldehyde, methanol, and simple sugars. Some of these molecules are surprisingly large, containing more than a dozen carbon atoms. They are identified through spectroscopy, the analysis of light absorbed or emitted by matter. Every molecule interacts with light in a unique way, producing a kind of fingerprint that telescopes can detect even across vast distances. These fingerprints have been found in molecular clouds such as the Orion Nebula and Sagittarius B2, a giant gas complex near the center of our galaxy. In Sagittarius B2, scientists have identified ethyl formate, the compound that gives raspberries their scent, along with amino acids and alcohols. The discovery of such molecules in the harsh environment of space demonstrates that complex chemistry can occur without the need for a planet or an atmosphere. Space itself is a chemical laboratory, operating on scales and times far beyond human experience. Meteorites provide the next piece of evidence. These ancient rocks are fragments of asteroids and comets that preserve the chemistry of the early solar system. When they fall to Earth, they offer a glimpse of the materials that existed before our planet was fully formed. One of the most studied examples is the Murchison meteorite, which landed in Australia in 1969. Inside, scientists found more than 70 different amino acids, many of which do not occur naturally on Earth. The meteorite also contained sugars, hydrocarbons, and nitrogen-rich bases similar to those found in DNA and RNA, isotopic. Analysis showed that these compounds were not the result of contamination after landing. They carried distinct ratios of carbon isotopes, indicating they formed in space, in conditions far colder and older than anything on Earth. The Murchison meteorite remains one of the most convincing demonstrations that the precursors of life can be synthesized beyond our planet and later delivered to worlds like ours. Comets offer another perspective. These icy bodies, which orbit the sun along elongated paths, are remnants of the early solar system preserved in deep freeze. When a comet approaches the sun, its ices vaporize, creating the glowing coma and tail visible from Earth. The European Space Agency's Rosetta mission which orbited Comet 67P Churyumov-Gerasimenko between 2014 and 2016, carried instruments capable of analyzing the comet's dust and gas in unprecedented detail. Rosetta detected a wide range of organic compounds: formaldehyde, glycine, the simplest amino acid, and phosphorus, an element essential for DNA and energy transfer in cells. These findings were profound. They confirmed that comets contain the same fundamental ingredients found in living organisms, and may have delivered them to the early Earth during periods of intense bombardment. When the young planet was still cooling, countless comets and asteroids collided with its surface, bringing water and organic matter. Over millions of years, this cosmic rain could have seeded the prebiotic chemistry that later evolved into life. Stardust mission provided complementary evidence. Launched in 1999, it was designed to collect particles from the coma of Comet Wild to and return them to Earth. In 2006, the capsule landed safely with its precious cargo. Analysis revealed a range of organic compounds, including amino acids and complex hydrocarbons. The materials had survived both the harsh environment of space and the fiery re-entry into Earth's atmosphere, proving that organic molecules can endure conditions once thought too extreme for survival. Organic chemistry in space is not limited to comets and meteorites. Planetary moons and interstellar environments also participate in it. On Saturn's moon Titan, thick orange clouds conceal a surface covered with lakes and rivers of liquid methane and ethane. The Cassini-Huygens mission discovered that Titan's atmosphere is rich and complex. Hydrocarbons and nitriles, molecules that can combine to form structures resembling the polymers of life. Although Titan is far too cold for liquid water, it demonstrates that organic synthesis occurs naturally wherever carbon, hydrogen, and energy coexist. Similarly, on Jupiter's moon, Europa, and Saturn's Enceladus, plumes of water vapor and organic material erupt through cracks in the ice, hinting at subsurface oceans that may contain hydrothermal vents. Spacecraft have detected methane, carbon dioxide, and other simple organics in these plumes. Together, these discoveries reinforce a consistent theme. The chemistry of life is not an earthly anomaly, but a widespread cosmic process. One of the most intriguing aspects of this chemistry is its universality. The same reactions that occur in laboratories on Earth can happen spontaneously in interstellar clouds or on icy dust grains. When ultraviolet light or cosmic radiation strikes these ices, it breaks bonds and rearranges atoms, forming new molecules. Over millions of years, radiation-driven reactions can create prebiotic compounds similar to those that preceded life. Here, experiments on the International Space Station have confirmed that many organic molecules can survive long exposures to radiation and vacuum. Some even remain stable for years in simulated Martian or lunar environments. These results suggest that the ingredients of life could travel between worlds, protected within meteorites or dust particles, an idea known as panspermia. While panspermia does not explain the original origin of life, it proposes that once life or its components arise, they can spread through space, perhaps bridging the gap between solar systems. Spectroscopic surveys using modern telescopes continue to expand our catalog of cosmic organics. The James Webb Space Telescope, JWST, has already detected carbon-bearing molecules in distant protoplanetary disks, the regions around young stars where planets are forming. These findings imply that the seeds of life are present from the earliest stages of planetary evolution. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen are the architects of complexity. and the universe appears to assemble them with remarkable consistency. This view changes how we see our place in the cosmos. Life no longer seems like a rare accident, but rather a potential outcome of natural chemistry repeated across billions of worlds. The same laws that shaped Earth's oceans and atmosphere operate everywhere. Stars forge the elements. Planets provide the environments. Chemistry takes care of the rest. Life, in this sense, is the universe learning to organize itself. Still, there are limits. Not every environment with organic molecules will support biology. The presence of amino acids or hydrocarbons is only a first step. For life to emerge, those molecules must assemble into systems capable of self-maintenance and replication. Yet the abundance of these compounds throughout space gives reason for optimism. If the building blocks are common, perhaps the architectures they create are. In this way, the cosmos tells a quiet and consistent story. It has been preparing for life long before life appeared. Carbon chemistry is its language, written in the light of stars and the dust between them. And even though these molecules drift silently through space, they carry within them the potential for something far more organized, a pattern that, given the right environment, could awaken into living matter. As we continue to explore. The next question becomes where these cosmic ingredients find conditions stable enough to come together as living systems. Which worlds can host liquid water, maintain an atmosphere, and preserve energy long enough for complexity to arise? To answer that, we turn to the concept of the habitable zone, the region around a star where life, as we know it, might take hold. Among all the ingredients necessary for life, one stands apart as the most fundamental: liquid water. Wherever we find life on Earth, from boiling volcanic pools to frozen Antarctic ice, from the ocean's depths to clouds high in the atmosphere, we find water. It is the universal medium of biology, the solvent that allows molecules to move, meet, and react. Without it, the chemistry of life as we know it cannot proceed. This is why scientists searching for life beyond Earth often begin with a simple principle: follow the water. But finding water in the vastness of space is not enough. It must be liquid, not locked in ice or vaporized by heat. And for that to happen, a planet's environment must fall within a delicate balance between temperature, pressure, and atmospheric composition to describe this balance. Astronomers use the concept of the habitable zone, sometimes called the Goldilocks zone, after the story where the porridge must be not too hot and not too cold, but just right. The habitable zone is the region around a star where conditions allow liquid water to exist on a planet's surface. Too close to the star, and water evaporates. Too far away, and it freezes. The exact boundaries of this zone depend on several factors. The first and most obvious is the star's brightness and temperature. A large hot star emits far more energy than a smaller one, so its habitable zone lies farther out. For a small, cool star, the zone is much closer in. Our Sun's habitable zone extends roughly from the orbit of Venus to just beyond Mars. Earth lies comfortably within it, maintaining temperatures that allow oceans to exist for billions of years. However, the habitable zone is not a fixed shell in space. It shifts over time as a star ages and changes in brightness. It also depends on a planet's atmosphere, which can trap heat through the greenhouse effect. On Earth, carbon dioxide, water vapor, and methane help regulate the planet's temperature, keeping it warm enough for liquid water. Without this natural greenhouse layer, our average surface temperature would be well below freezing. Mars offers an example of how fragile this balance can be. Early in its history, Mars likely had a thicker atmosphere and flowing rivers, but over time, it lost most of its gases to space. Without enough atmospheric pressure to retain heat, water on its surface froze or evaporated. The opposite extreme is Venus, where a runaway greenhouse effect turned the planet into a furnace. Dense clouds of carbon dioxide trap so much heat that surface temperatures exceed 460 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt lead. Both Mars and Venus remind us that being in the right orbital zone is only part of the equation. The second factor shaping habitability is the composition and density of the atmosphere. A planet with too thin an atmosphere cannot maintain liquid water because water will boil away at low pressure, even if the temperature seems moderate. Conversely, a dense atmosphere can create crushing pressure or overheat the surface. Earth's atmosphere strikes an extraordinary balance, thick enough to hold water and protect from radiation, but thin enough to allow sunlight to reach the surface. The third factor involves planetary size and internal heat. A planet must be massive enough to retain an atmosphere over billions of years, yet not so massive that it becomes a gas giant. Internal heat, produced by radioactive decay and residual energy from formation, drives geological activity. On Earth, this activity maintains a magnetic field and recycles carbon through volcanism and plate tectonics, processes that help stabilize climate over time. Mars, being smaller, cooled faster, lost its magnetic field, and with it, much of its atmosphere. In recent decades, the discovery of exoplanets, planets orbiting other stars, has expanded our understanding of habitable zones. A Kepler Space Telescope alone has identified thousands of these worlds, and statistical analysis suggests that most stars have at least one planet. Many of them orbit within their star's habitable zone, though habitable in this context means potentially suitable for liquid water, not necessarily for life. One of the first Earth-sized exoplanets found in a habitable zone was Kepler 186f, orbiting a small red dwarf about 500 light-years away. Its distance from its star suggests temperatures that could allow liquid water. However, because red dwarfs emit less visible light and more infrared radiation, the conditions on such planets might differ greatly from those on Earth. Many red dwarfs also produce powerful flares that could strip away a planet's atmosphere. Another promising world is Proxima Centauri b, orbiting the star closest to our solar system. It lies within the star's habitable zone and is only about 4.2 light-years away. Yet its star, too, is a flare-prone red dwarf, raising doubts about the planet's ability to sustain an atmosphere. Even so, its proximity makes it a primary target for future observations with powerful telescopes. Astronomers categorize habitable zones more precisely by considering the types of stars they orbit. For example, a G-type star like our Sun offers a long-lived, stable environment, giving planets billions of years for life to evolve. M-type red dwarfs, though smaller and cooler, are the most common stars in the galaxy, making them statistically significant for habitability. Their planets, however, often orbit so close that they may become tidally locked, with one side always facing the star while the other remains in darkness. In such cases, life would depend on whether atmospheric or oceanic circulation could distribute heat evenly, enough to prevent freezing on one side and scorching on the other. The boundaries of the habitable zone also depend on what we mean by habitable. Traditionally, it has been defined by the conditions necessary for liquid water, but alternative chemistries may shift those limits. For example, in a methane or ammonia-based biosphere, the required temperature range would be very different. For now, scientists focus on water because it is the only solvent known to support complex biochemistry. And because its properties are uniquely favorable, It remains liquid over a wide temperature range. It expands when frozen, and it can dissolve an enormous variety of compounds. Beyond the classical definition, researchers have introduced the concept of extended habitability. This includes worlds where internal heat or tidal energy, rather than sunlight, maintain liquid water beneath the surface. Jupiter's moon Europa and Saturn's Enceladus are prime examples. Both lie far outside the sun's traditional habitable zone, yet they possess subsurface oceans kept warm by gravitational flexing. If life can exist there, it means that habitability is not limited to surface temperature, but depends on energy flow and chemical balance. The concept of a habitable zone also evolves with time. As stars age, their luminosity changes, pushing the zone outward. Earth's own habitability has not been static. Early in its history, the sun was fainter, yet geological evidence shows liquid water existed. This paradox is explained by higher concentrations of greenhouse gases that kept the planet warm. In the distant future, as the sun gradually brightens, the habitable zone will move beyond Earth's orbit. In roughly 1 billion years, increasing solar radiation may cause our oceans to evaporate, transforming Earth into something more like Venus. Understanding habitable zones, therefore, is not only about finding where life might exist now, but also where it might have existed or could exist in the future. It's a dynamic concept, a moving window through which planets pass as both they and their stars evolve. The search for habitable worlds continues to accelerate with advances in technology. The James Webb Space Telescope and the upcoming Extremely Large Telescope, ELT, allow astronomers to analyze the atmospheres of distant exoplanets, looking for gases such as oxygen, methane, and carbon dioxide. The presence of these gases in certain ratios could signal the balance of chemistry associated with biological processes. Observing such patterns will be one of the key goals in the coming decades. Ultimately, the habitable zone is less a precise boundary and more a framework, a way to focus our search in a universe of almost infinite variety. It reminds us that life is not only about place, but about balance, between energy and stability, between warmth and cold, between chaos and order. That balance, fragile and persistent, defines the narrow space where matter can become a live dot in this calm equilibrium. Water is the messenger, carrying the potential for chemistry to awaken. It links worlds together across time and space, flowing wherever conditions allow. And as we trace its presence through our solar system and beyond, we begin to see that the story of life is, in many ways, the story of water itself. From this foundation, our journey moves naturally to the next question. If the habitable zone defines where life could exist, then which nearby world might once have actually hosted it? To find clues, we turn to our planetary neighbor, Mars, a world that may still hold echoes of its watery past. For generations, Mars has held a special place in the human imagination. It is close enough for us to see its reddish hue with the naked eye, yet distant enough to remain mysterious. Throughout history, it has been a mirror for our hopes and fears, a possible cradle of life, a desolate twin, a silent reminder that worlds can change. In modern science, Mars is more than a symbol. It is the most studied planet in our search for life beyond Earth. Mars and Earth began their stories together, forming from the same cloud of dust and gas about 4.5 billion years ago. Early in their histories, they may have looked remarkably similar. Both had thick atmospheres, active volcanoes, and liquid water flowing across their surfaces. But while Earth remained temperate and alive, Mars changed. Its rivers dried, its atmosphere thinned, and its magnetic field faded away. What caused these two sibling worlds to diverge so dramatically has become one of the central questions of planetary science. Today, Mars is a cold desert world, smaller than Earth, and only about half its diameter. Its thin atmosphere is composed mostly of carbon dioxide, with traces of nitrogen, argon, and a few other gases. Surface pressure is less than 1% of Earth's, making it impossible for liquid water to remain stable for long. Daytime temperatures near the equator can briefly reach 20 degrees Celsius, but nights plunge far below freezing, often to minus 80 degrees Celsius or lower. Despite these harsh conditions, Mars remains one of the most promising places in the solar system to search for past or even present life. The first hints that Mars once had a warmer, wetter climate came from telescopic observations in the late 19th century. Astronomers such as Giovanni Schiaparelli and Percival Lowell reported seeing what they described as linear canals, which they interpreted as evidence of intelligent engineering. Later, higher resolution imaging revealed that these features were optical illusions, patterns, created by the human eye rather than structures on the surface. Yet the idea of water on Mars persisted, because even from afar, the planet's polar caps and color variations suggested geological change. Modern exploration began in the 1960s and 1970s, with robotic missions from the United States and the Soviet Union. The Mariner spacecraft provided the first close-up images, showing a cratered landscape reminiscent of the Moon. At first, this seemed to crush hopes of a living Mars, but subsequent missions painted a more complex picture. The Viking 1 and 2 landers, which touched down in 1976, conducted experiments to test for microbial life in the Martian soil. The results were ambiguous. One experiment hinted at metabolic reactions when nutrients were added to soil samples, but follow-up tests failed to confirm biological activity. The debate over those findings continues to this day. Since Viking, technology has advanced dramatically. Orbiters such as Mars Global Surveyor, Mars Odyssey, and Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter have mapped the planet in extraordinary detail. They revealed ancient river valleys, delta formations, and sedimentary layers, all signs that liquid water once shaped the surface. Certain minerals, like clays and sulfates, can form only in the presence of water, suggesting that Mars once had lakes. Perhaps even shallow seas. Rover missions have built on this foundation. The Spirit and Opportunity rovers, which landed in 2004, found evidence of past water through mineral deposits. Opportunity, in particular, discovered hematite spheres, tiny iron-rich concretions, nicknamed blueberries, that form in liquid environments. Curiosity, which arrived in 2012, explored Gale Crater and found ancient lakebeds containing complex organic molecules. And Perseverance, which landed in 2021, is currently investigating an ancient delta in Jezero Crater, an area once filled by flowing rivers. These discoveries have transformed our understanding of Mars. We now know that billions of years ago, it had conditions suitable for life. It possessed a thicker atmosphere, a magnetic field to shield it from solar radiation, and liquid water stable on the surface for millions of years. The question that remains is whether life ever took advantage of those conditions, and if so, whether any trace of it survives today. Several factors explain why Mars changed. Being smaller than Earth, it lost heat more quickly, causing its core to cool and its magnetic field to weaken. Without this magnetic protection, the solar wind gradually stripped away much of its atmosphere. As pressure dropped, water evaporated or froze, and the planet entered its current state of dryness and cold. What remains today is a fossilized record of that transformation. a world that once might have been habitable, but now lies dormant. Yet Mars is not entirely dead. Seasonal changes reveal active processes, dust storms that sweep across entire hemispheres, shifting dunes, and hints of subsurface ice melting during warmer months. Spacecraft have detected plumes of methane in the atmosphere, a gas that on Earth is often produced by living organisms, but can also arise from geological reactions. The methane levels fluctuate over time, suggesting active sources and sinks beneath the surface. This mystery keeps astrobiologists intrigued. If microbes once lived underground, protected from radiation, perhaps some still persist there today. The search for such evidence continues through multiple missions. The ExoMars Rosalind Franklin rover, a collaboration between the European Space Agency and Roscosmos, aims to drill 2 meters below the surface to look for preserved biosignatures. NASA's Perseverance rover is collecting rock samples that future missions will return to Earth for detailed analysis. These samples could provide the first direct tests for ancient, microbial life beyond our planet. Orbiters complement this work by studying mineral composition, ice distribution, and atmospheric dynamics. Instruments like the Mars Climate Sounder and Trace gas orbiter measure how temperature and chemical signatures change over time. Together, they build a comprehensive view of Mars as an active, evolving planet, one that still holds secrets beneath its red dust. Mars also teaches us about planetary habitability more broadly. It shows that a world can start in a life-friendly zone and yet lose that potential through natural evolution. Climate stability is not guaranteed. It depends on size, atmosphere, magnetic protection, and time. Mars reminds us that habitability is not a permanent feature, but a phase, one that can end quietly as a planet cools and fades. At the same time, the planet offers a glimpse of resilience. Water may no longer flow freely on the surface, but ice caps, glacial deposits, and frost layers remain. Radar instruments have detected thick subsurface ice sheets extending to mid-latitudes. In some craters, recurring slope lines, dark streaks that appear and fade with the seasons, might indicate transient flows of briny water. Even in its present state, Mars shows hints of motion, of chemistry still unfolding. Future missions aim to explore these regions directly. NASA and SpaceX envision crewed missions that could analyze samples on site, study subsurface ice, and search for extant microbes. The Mars Sample Return Program, a joint effort between NASA and the European Space Agency, is scheduled to bring back sealed rock cores collected by Perseverance. Laboratory analysis on Earth will allow scientists to test for subtle organic signatures that current instruments cannot detect remotely. Beyond science, Mars also connects emotionally to our sense of curiosity. It is the nearest world that could one day host human explorers. But even before that happens, robotic probes are already showing us that the red planet is not simply barren. It is a record keeper, preserving evidence of a once wet era, and perhaps of the processes that bridge the gap between lifeless chemistry and biology. The ongoing research on Mars has profound implications. If we find even a single fossilized microbe or a chemical pattern consistent with metabolism, it would mean that life arose at least twice in one solar system, once on Earth and once on Mars. Such a discovery would reshape our understanding of how common life may be throughout the cosmos. If, on the other hand, Mars proves completely sterile, it would teach us that the conditions for life are more fragile than we think. Either outcome deepens our knowledge of what it means for a world to be alive. There is a quiet symbolism in Mars's story. 2 planets began as near equals, yet followed different paths, one green and thriving, the other frozen and still. In that contrast lies a lesson about balance, time, and the fine margins of habitability. Mars may not speak, but its silence tells a history written in rock and dust. One that echoes our own planet's early struggles. As we move forward, the questions extend beyond Mars. If life once flourished there, could it also exist in the hidden oceans of icy moons farther from the sun? The next step in our journey leads to those distant worlds, Europa and Enceladus, where beneath layers of ice, dark oceans continue to move, warm, and perhaps, quietly, to live. When we imagine the search for life beyond Earth, we often think of planets bathed in sunlight, with oceans glistening under open skies. Yet in recent decades, the most promising places to look have turned out to be very different. Worlds of darkness and ice, orbiting far from the warmth of the sun. Among them, two stand out as especially intriguing: Europa, a moon of Jupiter, and Enceladus, a moon of Saturn. Both hide vast oceans beneath their frozen surfaces. Oceans that may hold all the ingredients necessary for life. Europa was discovered by Galilei in 1610, one of 4 large moons orbiting Jupiter. For centuries, it appeared as a simple bright dot through telescopes, smooth and featureless. Only in the late 20th century, when spacecraft began to visit the Jovian system, did its true nature emerge. The Voyager missions in 1979 revealed a world of striking beauty, a white surface crisscrossed by long, dark lines like cracks in glass. Unlike the heavily cratered surfaces of most moons, Europa looked young and active. Something beneath the ice was reshaping it. Further exploration by the Galileo spacecraft in the 1990s confirmed what scientists had begun to suspect. Beneath Europa's frozen crust lies a global ocean of liquid water. The evidence came from several lines of observation. First, Europa's surface is covered with a pattern of ridges and fractures that resemble sea ice on Earth, suggesting movement from below. Second, Galileo detected magnetic variations around the moon that could only be explained by a conductive layer, likely a salty ocean beneath the ice. Models indicate that Europa's ocean may be 60 to 150 kilometers deep, containing more than twice the total volume of Earth's oceans. It remains liquid because of tidal heating, a process that occurs as Jupiter's immense gravity stretches and squeezes the moon during its orbit. The friction generated within the interior produces heat, preventing the ocean from freezing solid despite the frigid surface temperature of around -160 degrees Celsius. The presence of liquid water alone makes Europa a key target in astrobiology. But its potential goes further. The ocean lies in contact with a rocky mantle, where chemical reactions between rock and water could provide energy sources similar to those that sustain life around hydrothermal vents on Earth. On our planet, such vents host entire ecosystems, thriving in complete darkness. Microbes there feed not on sunlight, but on chemical energy released from reactions between water and minerals, a process known as chemosynthesis. If similar processes occur on Europa's ocean floor, they could support microbial life. No light would reach this hidden sea, but energy from below might be enough. Even without direct evidence of organisms, detecting such chemistry would show that the basic preconditions for life exist far beyond Earth's surface environments. Above the ocean, the icy crust of Europa is not a static shell. It shifts and fractures under tidal forces, allowing materials from the ocean to reach the surface and possibly the reverse. Some regions appear stained with reddish-brown material that may contain salts or organic compounds brought up from below. These deposits could be valuable clues. If spacecraft can sample them directly, scientists might detect the chemical fingerprints of biological processes. The upcoming Europa Clipper mission, scheduled by NASA for launch in the mid-2020s, aims to do just that. It will conduct dozens of close flybys, using radar to probe beneath the ice and spectrometers to analyze surface composition. Instruments will measure the thickness of the crust, map areas where the ocean may come closest to the surface, and search for potential plumes, jets of water vapor erupting through cracks, similar to those discovered on Enceladus. Each measurement brings us closer to understanding whether Europa's hidden sea is merely an ocean of chemistry or an ocean of life. Enceladus, orbiting Saturn, is smaller than Europa, only about 500 kilometers across, but no less remarkable. When the Cassini spacecraft arrived at Saturn in 2004, Enceladus appeared to be another frozen, inert world. But in 2005, Cassini made a discovery that changed our view of the outer solar system. Near the moon's south pole, it found towering plumes of water vapor and ice particles shooting hundreds of kilometers into space through fissures in the surface. These fractures, nicknamed tiger stripes, are regions where heat from below keeps the ice warm and flexible. Analysis of the plumes showed that they contained not only water, but also methane, carbon dioxide, ammonia, and complex organic molecules. Cassini even detected microscopic grains of silica, suggesting interaction between water and hot rock, a strong indicator of hydrothermal activity at the ocean floor. The combination of liquid water, heat, and organic compounds places Enceladus among the most likely candidates for harboring microbial life. Like Europa, Enceladus stays warm because of tidal forces. As it orbits Saturn, gravitational stress flexes its interior, generating heat. Beneath its icy crust, which may be about 20 to 30 kilometers thick, lies a global ocean of salty water. Models suggest that this ocean could be in contact with a rocky core, creating the same kind of mineral-water reactions that sustain ecosystems near Earth's hydrothermal vents. Cassini's instruments sampled the plumes directly as the spacecraft flew through them multiple times. In those brief passes, it detected organic molecules containing up to 10 carbon atoms, far more complex than previously expected. Some of the material appeared to include nitrogen and oxygen-bearing compounds, both essential for biochemistry. These findings do not prove life, but they show that the chemistry necessary for life's emergence exists right now, not just in the distant past. Perhaps the most striking aspect of Enceladus is accessibility. Because its plumes eject material directly into space, a spacecraft could study its ocean without drilling through kilometers of ice. Future missions could collect and analyze samples as they pass through the geysers, searching for isotopic patterns or molecular structures consistent with biological activity. This makes Enceladus a natural laboratory, one that continues to vent its secrets into the vacuum. Both Europa and Enceladus challenge traditional ideas of habitability. They lie far beyond the sun's classical habitable zone, in regions where sunlight is too weak to warm their surfaces. Yet internal energy, rather than solar radiation, maintains liquid water. This shows that life might exist in far more diverse environments than we once imagined, not only on the surfaces of planets, but in the hidden oceans of icy moons. On Earth, analog environments provide insights into what such life might look like. In Antarctica's subglacial lakes, in the dark waters beneath kilometers of ice, microbial communities survive in cold, isolated ecosystems. Near hydrothermal vents, bacteria metabolize hydrogen sulfide and methane, forming the foundation for entire food chains. These discoveries demonstrate that life can adapt to extreme conditions, relying on chemistry rather than sunlight. They provide a living model for what might exist under the icy crusts of Europa and Enceladus. The scientific implications are immense. If even simple microbial life were discovered in one of these oceans, it would confirm that life can originate independently of Earth, perhaps wherever water, energy, and chemistry intersect. It would mean that biology is not a rare accident, but a common outcome of physical processes. Conversely, if these moons are sterile, despite their ideal conditions, it could suggest that the spark of life is rarer and more fragile than we think. The exploration of these moons continues to expand. The Europa Clipper will be followed by JUICE, the Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, from the European Space Agency, which will study Europa and other Jovian moons in detail. Concepts for future missions to Enceladus, such as orbiters and sample return probes, are also in development. Each mission aims to test the same fundamental question: where there is water, is there life? Beyond their scientific importance, Europa and Enceladus invite a deeper reflection on the adaptability of nature. Life, as we understand it, does not demand sunlight or open air, only a stable flow of energy and the right chemistry. These moons remind us that habitability may be far more widespread than surface conditions suggest. Even in the cold outer reaches of the solar system, there are worlds where warmth comes from within, and where oceans breathe beneath miles of ice dot. It is a quiet thought that under the frozen skin of these distant moons, something might move or feed or simply persist unobserved for billions of years. Whether alive or merely chemical, these hidden oceans represent a bridge between the known and the possible. They are reminders that the universe holds more than one kind of world, and perhaps more than one kind of life. From these icy seas, our search will soon extend even farther, to Titan, Saturn's largest moon, where liquid methane flows across the surface, and chemistry unfolds in a form utterly alien to our own. Among all the moons in our solar system, Titan, the largest moon of Saturn, is one of the most extraordinary. It is a world that, in many ways, mirrors Earth, yet it does so in a completely different form of chemistry. Titan has rivers, lakes, clouds, and rain, but they are not made of water. They are made of methane and ethane, hydrocarbons that exist as liquids in Titan's frigid environment. This distant moon offers a rare glimpse of what an alien climate system might look like: a full cycle of evaporation, condensation, and precipitation operating with substances other than water. It challenges our Earth-centered perspective of what habitability means and invites us to consider that life, if it exists elsewhere, might be built from entirely different materials. Titan was discovered by the Dutch astronomer Christian Huygens in 1655. But for centuries, it appeared as little more than a faint point of light orbiting Saturn. Its true nature began to unfold with the Voyager missions in the early 1980s. As Voyager 1 flew past Saturn, it found that Titan was wrapped in a thick orange haze that completely obscured the surface. That haze hinted at a dense atmosphere, something no other moon was known to possess. Later, detailed measurements confirmed that Titan's atmosphere is composed primarily of nitrogen, like Earth's, but with a significant amount of methane and traces of complex organic compounds. The Cassini-Huygens mission, launched in 1997 as a collaboration between NASA and the European Space Agency, revolutionized our understanding of Titan. Cassini orbited Saturn for over 13 years, while the Huygens probe separated and descended through Titan's atmosphere in January 2005, landing softly on its surface. As it fell, Huygens transmitted images of branching river channels and dark lowlands that looked strikingly similar to terrestrial landscapes. For the first time, humanity saw the surface of Titan, smooth plains, scattered rocks, and a hazy horizon under an orange sky. What Cassini and Huygens revealed was a complex and active world. Titan's surface temperature hovers around minus 179 degrees Celsius, far too cold for liquid water, but perfect for liquid hydrocarbons. Methane, which on Earth exists as a gas, behaves on Titan like water does on Earth. It forms clouds, falls as rain, carves channels, and collects in lakes and seas. The largest of these, Kraken Mare and Ligeia Mare, are vast bodies of liquid methane and ethane, hundreds of kilometers across. Radar data show that their surfaces are smooth and reflective, and some even display waves a few centimeters high, the gentle ripples of an alien sea. Beneath this methane-based hydrological cycle lies an even deeper mystery. Titan is believed to possess an internal ocean of liquid water mixed with ammonia, buried beneath a crust of ice tens of kilometers thick. Evidence for this comes from measurements of the moon's rotation and gravity field, which suggest that its outer shell is decoupled from the core, as if it were floating on a subsurface liquid layer. In this way, Titan might combine two types of oceans, a surface one made of hydrocarbons, and a hidden one made of water. The chemistry of Titan's atmosphere is equally fascinating. Sunlight and energetic particles from Saturn's magnetosphere constantly bombard the upper atmosphere, breaking apart methane molecules and triggering a cascade of reactions. These reactions produce complex organic compounds known as tholins, which accumulate as a thick orange haze. Tholins are not living matter, but they are precursors, rich in carbon and nitrogen, capable of forming amino acids and other molecules, essential to biology under the right conditions. Laboratory experiments simulating Titan's atmosphere have demonstrated that ultraviolet radiation acting on methane and nitrogen can produce a wide range of organic molecules. These particles settle onto the surface, creating dark dunes and coating the icy plains. Over time, they may be buried, mixed with other compounds, and transformed by interactions with the subsurface ocean. Titan, therefore, may host a kind of prebiotic chemistry, a network of chemical reactions that resemble the early stages of life's development, even if no life currently exists there. From an astrobiological perspective, Titan represents an entirely different form of potential habitability. While Europa and Enceladus provide environments where life could arise in liquid water beneath ice, Titan invites speculation about life without water, life that might rely on methane or ethane as solvents instead. The concept seems exotic, but chemists have shown that certain organic molecules can remain stable and reactive in such environments. Hypothetical organisms on Titan, if they exist, might use liquid methane to transport nutrients and rely on hydrogen or acetylene as energy sources, although no evidence of life has been found. The possibility remains open because Titan's chemistry operates at the edge of known conditions. On Earth, all biology depends on polar solvents like water, which allow molecules to interact through charge differences. Methane, being nonpolar, behaves differently, meaning any life based on it would have a fundamentally distinct structure. It would be slower, more fragile, and possibly more static, but not impossible. As one scientist described it, life on Titan would be life in slow motion. The long-term presence of methane in Titan's atmosphere also raises questions. Methane should gradually break down under sunlight, disappearing within tens of millions of years, yet it persists. That means some process, geological or otherwise, must continually replenish it. Possible explanations include cryovolcanism, where icy volcanoes release methane from the interior, or chemical reactions in the crust. Some scientists even entertain the possibility of biological processes, Though this remains highly speculative, Titan's weather adds another layer of complexity. Cassini observed bright clouds forming and dissipating near the poles, occasional rainstorms, and seasonal changes driven by Saturn's 29-year orbit around the Sun. During Titan's summer, sunlight triggers increased evaporation from the lakes, thickening the methane haze. As the seasons shift, precipitation returns, filling rivers and restoring balance. This slow, rhythmic exchange of gases and liquids makes Titan the only world beyond Earth known to have a stable surface cycle involving liquids and an atmosphere. Geologically, Titan also appears dynamic. Its surface shows evidence of tectonic-like features, ridges, faults, and possibly cryovolcanic domes. These structures suggest that internal heat and pressure still shape the moon's crust. Beneath that crust, interactions between rock, ammonia, and water could create environments where chemical energy flows steadily. Much like the hydrothermal systems on Earth's seafloor, the exploration of Titan continues to expand. The next major step will come with NASA's Dragonfly mission, scheduled for launch in the mid-2030s. Dragonfly will be a rotorcraft, a drone-like vehicle capable of flying through Titan's thick atmosphere and landing at multiple locations. It will study surface composition, atmospheric chemistry, and potential signs of prebiotic molecules. Because Titan's gravity is weak and its air dense, flight there is far easier than on Earth. Dragonfly will be able to travel tens of kilometers between sites, sampling the rich organic material that blankets the moon. Through missions like Dragonfly, scientists hope to answer key questions. How far can chemistry progress without life? Can organic compounds self-organize in environments that are frozen by earthly standards? And might Titan represent an alternate path to complexity, one that never required water at all? Titan reminds us that the conditions for chemistry, and perhaps for life, need not resemble those of Earth. It shows that the universe's creativity is vast, and that nature experiments with many different patterns. Where Europa and Enceladus hold dark oceans beneath ice, Titan holds seas of liquid methane open to the sky. It is a world that redefines what we mean by habitable. There is a quiet poetry in that idea. Beneath an orange sky, under sunlight 1,000 times weaker than Earth's, rivers flow and rain falls, not of water, but of methane. The rhythm of evaporation and return continues, slow and steady, as it has for billions of years. In that rhythm lies the same principle that governs all living systems, the balance between change and stability, between chaos and structure. As our understanding deepens, Titan becomes not just an object of curiosity, but a key to understanding the diversity of worlds. It invites us to see life not as a single formula, but as a spectrum of possibilities shaped by physics and chemistry. Whether it is alive or not, Titan already expands the meaning of what life could be. From the methane seas of Titan, our journey now leads outward again, away from the moons of our own system, toward the stars beyond, where thousands of exoplanets orbit distant suns, each carrying its own potential for life. For most of human history, the question of whether other worlds existed was one of imagination rather than evidence. The stars seemed fixed and eternal, their faint light offering no hint of hidden companions. Even into the late 20th century, the idea of planets orbiting other suns remained unconfirmed. Astronomers had long suspected they must exist. After all, our sun was only one among billions, but the proof was beyond the reach of telescopes and instruments of the time. That changed in 1992, when two scientists, Alexander Volshan and Dale Frail, made a discovery that transformed astronomy. Using a radio telescope, they detected tiny variations in the signal of a distant pulsar, a rapidly spinning neutron star. The timing of its radio pulses was subtly irregular, as if something were tugging on it. The explanation was astonishing. The pulsar was being orbited by at least 2 planets. These were the first confirmed exoplanets, planets outside our solar system, although these particular worlds were unlikely to host life orbiting the remnants of a supernova. Their discovery proved the concept. If planets could survive even the violent death of a star, then they must be common throughout the galaxy. A few years later, in 1995, a second landmark followed. Michel Mayor and Didier Queloz detected a planet orbiting a normal, sun-like star, 51 Pegasi. The planet, dubbed 51 Pegasi b, was a gas giant orbiting extremely close to its star, so close that its year lasted only 4 Earth days. This discovery opened the era of modern exoplanet astronomy. Since then, the search for planets beyond our solar system has become one of the most dynamic fields in science. Early detections relied on indirect methods. The most successful is the radial velocity method, which measures the small wobble of a star caused by the gravitational pull of an orbiting planet. As the planet moves around the star itself moves slightly toward and away from us, shifting the wavelength of its light through the Doppler effect. From this motion, astronomers can estimate the planet's mass and orbital period. Another powerful approach is the transit method, which looks for tiny periodic dips in a star's brightness as a planet crosses in front of it. This technique allows scientists to determine a planet's size, and when combined with radial velocity data, its density. From these 2 parameters, we can infer whether a planet is gaseous like Jupiter, icy like Neptune, or rocky like Earth. The Kepler Space Telescope, launched by NASA in 2009, revolutionized this search. Over nearly a decade of operation, Kepler monitored more than 150,000 stars, continuously recording their brightness with extraordinary precision. It found thousands of planets of all kinds, hot Jupiters, mini Neptunes, and super-Earths, revealing that planetary systems are the rule, not the exception. Statistical analysis suggests that, on average, every star in the Milky Way hosts at least 1 planet. Some of these worlds lie in their stars' habitable zones, where conditions might allow liquid water. Others orbit so close that they complete a revolution in days, their surfaces scorched and molten. Some are giant planets with atmospheres of hydrogen and helium, while others are small, dense, and rocky. The diversity of these worlds has exceeded all expectations. A new generation of telescopes, including NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, TESS, and the James Webb Space Telescope, JWST, has continued this revolution. TESS scans nearly the entire sky, identifying promising targets, while JWST provides detailed follow-up observations, analyzing the composition of planetary atmospheres through spectroscopy. By studying the way starlight passes through or reflects off an atmosphere, scientists can detect gases such as water vapor, methane, carbon dioxide, and oxygen, the potential biosignatures of life. Already, JWST has made remarkable discoveries. It has detected water vapor in the atmospheres of several exoplanets, including WASP 96b and K218b, and even identified traces of carbon-bearing molecules. In the case of K218b, an intriguing detection of dimethyl sulfide, DMS, a compound on Earth, produced mainly by biological processes, has sparked both excitement and caution. While not yet confirmed, such findings demonstrate how close we are to the capability of identifying potentially habitable worlds. The range of planetary systems uncovered so far is astonishing. Some stars host planets packed tightly together, orbiting in days or weeks. Others have planets on elongated, eccentric paths or tilted orbital planes. Some planets orbit two stars, like the fictional Tatooine from Star Wars, while others drift freely through space, no longer bound to any star. Each discovery adds a new dimension to our understanding of how planetary systems form and evolve. Theorists have used these findings to refine models of planet formation. Planets begin as dust grains in a protoplanetary disk, the rotating cloud of gas and debris surrounding a young star. Over millions of years, these particles collide and stick together, growing into larger bodies, planetesimals, and eventually into planets. Observations of young star systems, such as those captured by the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array, ALMA, show these disks in action. In some, we can even see ring-like gaps carved by growing planets. Direct evidence of worlds being born. One of the most striking results of exoplanet research is the realization that our solar system may not be typical. Many exoplanetary systems contain large gas giants orbiting very close to their stars, something we do not see here. Others feature super-Earths, planets between Earth and Neptune in size, which are absent in our own system, but appear common elsewhere. This diversity challenges previous assumptions and reminds us that there are many paths to forming planets. When scientists focus on habitability, they look for Earth analogs, rocky planets within the habitable zone of Sun-like stars. Several candidates have emerged. The TRAPPIST-1 system, located about 40 light-years away, has 7 Earth-sized planets, 3 of which orbit within the habitable zone. Because TRAPPIST-1 is a cool red dwarf, its habitable zone lies close to the star, and the planets are likely tidally locked, with one side in permanent daylight and the other in eternal night. Nevertheless, simulations suggest that with thick enough atmospheres, some could maintain temperatures suitable for liquid water. Another example is Kepler-452b, sometimes called Earth's cousin. It orbits a star very similar to our Sun, at nearly the same distance, and may have a rocky composition. However, its star is older and slightly brighter, suggesting that if oceans once existed, they might now be evaporating. Even so, discoveries like this remind us that Earth-like environments may not be rare. As detection methods improve, astronomers are beginning to study smaller, cooler, and more distant planets, worlds where the balance of energy could resemble Earth's. Instruments capable of blocking a star's glare, known as coronagraphs and starshades, are being developed to capture direct images of exoplanets. These will allow us to measure reflected light and analyze it for signatures of vegetation, cloud cover, or atmospheric oxygen. The search for exoplanets is also reshaping how we think about life. For the first time, we can place Earth within a vast statistical context, one planet among billions. The Drake equation, once an abstract thought experiment estimating the number of civilizations in our galaxy, now has real data for several of its terms. The rate of star formation, the fraction of stars with planets, and the number of planets that might support life. Each discovery refines those estimates, narrowing the uncertainty that once stretched across orders of magnitude. Beyond science, there is a quiet philosophical shift. As we discover thousands of worlds, the uniqueness of Earth becomes both diminished and deepened. Diminished because we now know planets are common. Deepened because among this abundance, we have yet to find another quite like ours, a planet with liquid oceans, a balanced atmosphere, and the intricate web of life that fills every niche. In a sense, The search for exoplanets is the modern continuation of humanity's oldest curiosity to understand our place in the cosmos. Each detection is a data point, but also a reminder of scale. Light from these worlds travels for years, sometimes centuries, before reaching us. When we measure their spectra or model their climates, we are studying distant patterns of chemistry that may already have changed by the time their photons arrive. There is humility in that, the awareness that discovery often means seeing not the present, but the past. This era of exoplanet exploration is still young. The next generation of telescopes, such as the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope and proposed missions like LaVoire and HABEX, aim to detect true Earth analogs and possibly even technosignatures, the byproducts of advanced civilizations. Whether or not such evidence is found, the technological path itself expands what is possible. The exoplanet revolution has already transformed science in a single generation. From a handful of unknown worlds, we have moved to a galaxy filled with planets of every size and composition. The diversity of these discoveries teaches us that planetary systems are dynamic, creative, and resilient. It also brings us closer to the deeper question, not just how common planets are, but how common life might be as our telescopes peer farther and our instruments grow more precise. The silent dots of light that once seemed unreachable are becoming familiar. Among them may be worlds with skies and oceans, weather and seasons, and perhaps somewhere, the faint stirrings of biology. Once the existence of planets beyond our solar system became certain, the next great question emerged, not whether they exist, but whether any of them are alive. Finding an exoplanet is a triumph of engineering. Detecting life upon it is a far greater challenge. Across the vast distances between stars, we cannot yet travel or collect samples. All we have is light, the faint, filtered glow that reaches our telescopes. Yet within that light, scientists are learning to read the subtle signatures of biology. A biosignature is any measurable feature, a molecule, a pattern, or an imbalance that suggests the influence of living processes. On Earth, for example, the atmosphere contains a combination of gases that do not remain stable without constant renewal by life. Oxygen, methane, and carbon dioxide exist together in ratios that are chemically improbable. Left alone, these gases would react and neutralize each other within a few thousand years. Their coexistence is possible only because organisms continuously produce and consume them. Detecting a similar chemical disequilibrium elsewhere could be one of the clearest indicators of life. The first step in finding biosignatures is to study a planet's atmosphere. When light from a host star passes through or reflects off a planet's atmosphere, certain wavelengths are absorbed by gases, leaving distinctive fingerprints in the spectrum. By analyzing these absorption lines, scientists can identify the presence of specific molecules. Instruments on the James Webb Space Telescope, JWST, the Hubble Space Telescope, and ground-based observatories like the Very Large Telescope, VLT, are already doing this for some nearby exoplanets. However, detecting such signals is not simple. The light from a planet is billions of times fainter than that of its star. Even a small atmospheric feature can be easily lost in the glare. To separate the planet's light, astronomers use techniques such as transmission spectroscopy. During a planetary transit, when the planet crosses in front of its star, a tiny fraction of starlight filters through the atmosphere. By comparing the starlight before, during, and after the transit, we can isolate the atmospheric spectrum. Each dip in brightness corresponds to the absorption of specific wavelengths, revealing gases such as water vapor, methane, carbon monoxide, or ozone. Another method Emission spectroscopy analyzes the infrared light emitted or reflected by a planet's atmosphere and surface. This technique can reveal temperature, cloud cover, and even hints of weather systems. Combined, these observations allow scientists to infer not only what gases exist, but how they interact, whether they are in chemical balance or not. Certain combinations of gases are of particular interest. Oxygen and methane, as mentioned, form a classic pair of biosignatures because they readily react and destroy each other. Their simultaneous presence suggests continuous replenishment, potentially from photosynthesis and metabolism. Similarly, a mixture of nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and water vapor might indicate an Earth-like climate. Yet no single gas is definitive proof. Geological processes can mimic biology. Volcanoes, lightning, and ultraviolet radiation can produce methane or oxygen without life's involvement. Distinguishing these false positives is one of the main challenges in a STROB, IOLOG, Y. To strengthen interpretation. Scientists examine context. They study the planet's size, temperature, and star type to understand what chemical processes are likely. For example, a small rocky planet orbiting within the habitable zone of a stable star might sustain liquid water, while a gas giant near a flare-prone red dwarf could have its atmosphere constantly stripped away. By combining spectral data with physical models, researchers can separate likely biological signals from abiotic ones. A concept known as chemical disequilibrium lies at the heart of biosignature science. Life tends to drive systems away from chemical balance, maintaining concentrations of reactive gases through metabolism. Earth's atmosphere, with its 21% oxygen and trace methane, is a striking example. If viewed from light years away, it would appear far from equilibrium, a signature that something dynamic and self-sustaining is at work. This principle guides the search for similar patterns in exoplanet atmospheres. Detecting these signals requires extraordinary sensitivity. For most exoplanets, even the most advanced telescopes can capture only a few photons of planetary light for every billion photons from the star. To overcome this, astronomers are developing coronagraphs, instruments that block a star's light so that its planets can be seen directly. Future missions like NASA's Nancy grace Ramong Space. Telescope and proposed observatories, such as Lavoir and Habex, aim to use this technology to image Earth-like planets and analyze their atmospheres. When such direct images become possible, scientists will look for not only gases, but also surface features. The color of reflected light can reveal oceans, deserts, or vegetation. On Earth, plants absorb red and blue light for photosynthesis, but reflect green, a pattern called the vegetation red edge. If a similar spectral edge were detected on another planet, it could hint at photosynthetic organisms. However, even this would not be absolute proof. Mineral surfaces or microbial films could produce similar effects. Beyond chemistry and color, researchers are exploring more subtle biosignatures, patterns of light polarization, variations in atmospheric haze, and temporal changes over time. Life, by its nature, alters its environment in rhythmic ways, day-night cycles, seasonal changes, or periodic fluctuations in gas composition. Long-term monitoring could reveal such patterns, providing further evidence of biological activity. A complementary approach involves thermal emission. Planets with active biospheres might exhibit distinctive temperature distributions as life modifies climate through feedback processes. For example, vegetation on Earth absorbs sunlight and releases water vapor, cooling and humidifying the atmosphere. Detecting similar dynamic processes elsewhere would be a major breakthrough. The study of biosignatures also extends to exomoons, moons orbiting distant planets. In our own solar system, several moons show signs of subsurface oceans and chemical activity. If large exomoons exist around exoplanets in habitable zones, they too might host conditions suitable for life. Detecting them is extremely difficult, but ongoing observations with TESS and JWST are beginning to hint at possibilities. Each new detection adds a layer to a growing puzzle. In 2023, for instance, JWST observed K218b, a sub-Neptune exoplanet located 120 light-years away, and identified water vapor and methane in its atmosphere, along with possible traces of dimethyl sulfide. While not definitive evidence of life, such findings represent the first step toward recognizing atmospheric complexity that could arise from biology to interpret these discoveries. Scientists rely heavily on comparative planetology, the study of how planetary environments evolve. They model the chemistry of planets with and without life, testing which scenarios could produce similar observations. By simulating thousands of combinations of gases, pressures, and temperatures, researchers can filter out abiotic explanations and identify truly anomalous signals. The search for biosignatures is therefore both a scientific and philosophical endeavor. It requires not only technology, but also restraint, the discipline to separate excitement from evidence. Each detection must be examined carefully, verified by multiple instruments, and supported by a consistent physical model. The history of astronomy has shown how easily wishful thinking can outpace data, from the canals of Mars to the early misinterpretations of pulsar signals. Modern astrobiology moves forward cautiously, grounded in the principle that extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. At the same time, a search itself is transformative. Even the absence of confirmed life teaches us about the limits of habitability and the resilience of chemistry. By studying distant atmospheres, we learn more about our own, how fragile and finely balanced Earth's biosphere truly is. There is also a quiet elegance in the idea that light alone can carry the signatures of life across interstellar space. Photons, traveling for decades or centuries, may reach our instruments bearing the faint imprint of living processes. A breath of oxygen, a trace of methane, a whisper of chlorophyll. If we ever detect such a signal, it will not be a shout, but a subtle harmony within the spectrum, a pattern only patient observation can reveal. Future missions will push this work further. Telescopes like the extremely large telescope ELT in Chile and the 30-meter telescope TMT will provide the resolving power to study Earth-sized planets directly. Space-based interferometers may one day combine light from multiple satellites to achieve the clarity needed to detect biosignatures unambiguously. The path is long, but progress is steady. Each improvement in instrumentation narrows the gap between speculation and observation. Where once we wondered simply if planets existed, we now analyze their atmospheres and climates. In time, we may move from detecting gases to identifying ecosystems, or at least the chemical footprints they leave behind. From here, our journey naturally turns to another question. If life is common, where are its voices? Why have we not yet heard from other civilizations? To explore that mystery, we move next into the realm of probability, silence, and the paradox that bears the name of Enrico Fermi, the puzzle of a universe that should be full of life and yet remains quiet. When we imagine life elsewhere in the universe, we often begin with what we know: carbon-based organisms, water as the universal solvent, oxygen for energy, and DNA to carry genetic information. This model, drawn from our own biology, feels so fundamental that it is easy to forget it might only be one version among many. The search for alternative biochemistries asks a profound question. If life exists elsewhere, must it resemble life on Earth at all? To explore this question, scientists return to the essentials of biology. Life, in any form, requires three things: a source of energy, a medium for chemical reactions, and a way to store and transmit information. These are the universal criteria, but the materials that fulfill them need not be the same everywhere. On Earth, carbon and water play these roles with remarkable efficiency. Yet physics and chemistry allow for other possibilities, other elements, other solvents, and other forms of molecular organization that could sustain life under very different conditions. Carbon's dominance in biology stems from its versatility. Each carbon atom can form 4 stable covalent bonds, allowing it to build long chains, rings, and 3-dimensional frameworks. This makes it ideal for constructing complex molecules like proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. But carbon is not the only element capable of such complexity. Its neighbor on the periodic table, silicon, shares many of the same bonding properties. Silicon can also form 4 bonds and create elaborate structures, leading some scientists to propose that life based on silicon might be possible. Silicon-based life, however, faces significant challenges. Unlike carbon, silicon forms stronger bonds with oxygen, leading to stable but inert compounds such as quartz and silicates. These substances are solid at most temperatures where life could exist, limiting chemical flexibility. Carbon, by contrast, forms gases such as carbon dioxide and methane, which circulate easily through planetary atmospheres and biochemistry. Silicon's most accessible compounds tend to be insoluble and rigid, not ideal for dynamic biological systems. Yet, under different environmental conditions, silicon chemistry could behave differently. On a hotter planet or one with non-oxygenic atmospheres, perhaps rich in hydrogen or fluorine, silicon might form more reactive compounds like silanes, analogs to hydrocarbons. Laboratory experiments have shown that silanes can undergo complex reactions, forming polymer-like chains. If such chemistry occurred in a solvent other than water, perhaps in liquid methane or ammonia, silicon-based life might be plausible. It would be slower and less flexible than carbon life, but theoretically possible. Water, the solvent of earthly life, is another cornerstone that scientists question. Its molecular structure, polar, cohesive, and with a wide liquid range, makes it uniquely suited for supporting biological processes. But other liquids can also dissolve substances and support chemical reactions. Among the leading candidates are ammonia, methane, and formamide, each with properties that might enable life under different temperatures and pressures. Ammonia, Chia, is similar to water in many ways. It can dissolve many organic molecules and form hydrogen bonds, allowing complex chemistry. Its freezing point is much lower than water's, making it viable on colder worlds. However, ammonia's liquid range is narrower, and it is less effective at stabilizing large biomolecules. Still, an ammonia-based biosphere could exist on planets or moons colder than Earth, perhaps resembling the conditions on Titan's subsurface ocean. Chemical reactions there would proceed more slowly, but time in the cosmos is abundant. Methane, as found on Titan's surface, presents an even more exotic possibility. It is nonpolar, meaning that interactions between molecules would rely on weak forces rather than hydrogen bonding. This would require life to operate on entirely different principles, perhaps with cell membranes made of silicon or hydrocarbon polymers, and metabolic cycles that exploit hydrogen instead of oxygen. Reactions in such a medium would be slow and energy limited, but not impossible. Theoretical studies suggest that certain molecules could maintain stability and even self-replicate in liquid methane at Titan-like temperatures. Another solvent candidate, formamide, Chenot, stands out for its rich chemistry. It can dissolve both organic and inorganic compounds and may promote the formation of nucleic acid bases, the building blocks of RNA and DNA. On early Earth, formamide might have acted as an intermediate step between inorganic chemistry and biology. If similar conditions exist elsewhere, life might emerge in environments containing mixtures of water and formamide, possibly under moderate heat or within hydrothermal systems. Alternative biochemistries also raise questions about the structure of genetic information. On Earth, the double helix of DNA carries life's code through sequences of 4 bases. But the underlying principle, the storage of information in molecular sequences, could be implemented in many ways. Chemists have synthesized artificial analogs of DNA, such as PNA, peptide nucleic acid, and TNA, threose nucleic acid, which use different backbones but still encode information in a linear pattern. These molecules can replicate and mutate in laboratory conditions, suggesting that genetic systems are not unique to the DNA-RNA model. In theory, alien life could use completely different molecular frameworks to achieve the same goal. Even within carbon-based life, there is potential for radical variation. Life elsewhere might use solvents under high pressure, or biochemistries that rely on sulfur, phosphorus, or even arsenic in ways unfamiliar to Earth biology. In 2010, a controversial study claimed that bacteria from California's Mono Lake could incorporate arsenic in place of phosphorus in their DNA, although later experiments refuted this claim. It sparked renewed interest in biochemical flexibility. It reminded researchers that life's molecular toolkit might be broader than previously assumed. In environments with extreme temperatures or pressures, entirely new forms of chemistry could arise. On worlds with supercritical carbon dioxide, a state where CO behaves both as a liquid and a gas, reactions could proceed in unusual ways. Similarly, in planets rich in hydrocarbons or liquid nitrogen, life might exploit completely different energy pathways. The concept of metabolism could extend beyond oxygen-based respiration to include processes that use sulfur, iron, or even metal ions as electron donors and a CCEPTORS. Another frontier in this field is plasma life, the theoretical idea that under certain conditions, complex structures could form from ionized gas or electromagnetic fields. While still speculative, computer simulations suggest that self-organizing patterns can arise in plasma clouds, forming stable, dynamic vortices that exchange energy and information. If confirmed, such systems could represent a form of life independent of chemistry, life composed of patterns rather than matter. Although purely theoretical, this notion expands the philosophical boundaries of what living could mean. The search for alternative biochemistries also intersects with astrobiology's practical challenges. When designing missions to other worlds, scientists must decide what to look for. Instruments built to detect Earth-like molecules might overlook alien chemistries. To avoid this bias, researchers develop agnostic biosignatures, indicators of life that do not depend on specific molecules, but on general properties such as complexity, asymmetry, or energy disequilibrium. For example, life tends to produce molecules with one preferred orientation, a property known as chirality. Detecting a consistent bias in molecular handedness could point to biological processes, regardless of the molecule's composition. Understanding these possibilities requires broad thinking. Chemistry on Earth operates within a narrow range of temperatures, pressures, and solvents. But the universe offers extremes far beyond our experience. Superheated atmospheres, cryogenic surfaces, and pressures that crush steel. Somewhere within that range, new forms of chemistry might achieve the same balance of order and adaptability that defines life here. If such forms exist, they might be invisible to our current instruments, not because they are absent, but because we are not yet asking the right questions. The challenge for science is to design tools flexible enough to detect unfamiliar biochemistries. Future missions to Titan, Europa, and exoplanets will include instruments capable of analyzing a broader spectrum of organic compounds, searching for patterns of complexity rather than specific molecules. The study of alternative biochemistries is more than speculation. It is a way to test the universality of life's principles. If life truly depends only on physics and chemistry, then wherever the conditions allow complexity, something alive or lifelike should arise. If instead, life is a rare alignment of improbable factors, then even the richest chemistry may remain sterile. Both outcomes carry deep implications. There is a quiet wonder in this inquiry. By imagining forms of life that breathe methane, swim in ammonia, or grow from silicon, we extend our understanding of what nature can achieve. Each hypothesis is not only a scientific model, but an act of curiosity, a reminder that life, in all its diversity, may express itself through countless variations of the same fundamental harmony. Matter organized against chaos, patterns sustained by energy. As we continue our search, this open perspective becomes essential. When we eventually encounter an alien world rich in chemistry, we must be ready to recognize life even when it does not look familiar. By now, the evidence tells us that planets are common, organic molecules are abundant, and the conditions for life exist across the galaxy. The chemistry of biology seems written into the universe itself. Given these facts, it would seem natural to expect that life, even intelligent life, should be widespread. Yet when we look and listen into the vastness of space, we find only silence. This contradiction is known as the Fermi paradox, one of the most thought-provoking puzzles in science. The paradox is named after the Italian physicist Enrico Fermi, who, during a casual conversation in 1950, famously asked, "Where is everybody?" His question captured a tension that remains unresolved. If the galaxy contains billions of stars older than our sun, many with Earth-like planets, then intelligent civilizations should have had ample time to emerge and spread. Even at sublight speeds, a technological species could, in principle, explore or colonize the entire Milky Way within a few million years, a fraction of its age. So why don't we see evidence of them? The Fermi paradox arises not from the absence of life itself, but from the mismatch between probability and observation. Statistically, the galaxy should be teeming with civilizations. Empirically, we see no clear signs. Over the decades, scientists have proposed many explanations, ranging from the soberly scientific to the deeply philosophical. None have yet resolved the mystery, but together they reveal how much we still have to learn. About life's place in the cosmos. The simplest possibility is that life is rare. Although the ingredients for life are common, the process that turns chemistry into biology may depend on a chain of unlikely events. Perhaps the origin of self-replicating molecules requires conditions so specific that it happens only once in a galaxy, or once in many galaxies. This view is sometimes called the rare Earth hypothesis. It argues that while microbial life may appear often, the leap to complex, intelligent life demands an improbable sequence: stable climate, plate tectonics, magnetic protection, a large moon, and billions of years of stability. If even one of these factors is exceptional, Earth might be a singular oasis, yet other scientists counter that time itself is generous. The universe is more than 13 billion years old, and the Milky Way contains over 100 billion stars. Even if the probability of life arising is minuscule, the sheer number of opportunities could still yield many civilizations. If that's true, then perhaps the problem lies not in the existence of others, but in our ability to detect them. One explanation suggests that extraterrestrial civilizations may be common but quiet. They could exist in forms we cannot yet recognize, biological, artificial, or something beyond both. Communication might not occur through radio waves, which we've used for just over a century. Civilizations far older than ours might employ methods of information exchange we haven't imagined, such as quantum communication, neutrino signaling, or technologies that blend seamlessly into natural cosmic noise. In that case, the silence we perceive may simply be a limitation of our instruments and understanding. Another possibility is that intelligent civilizations arise, but rarely last long enough to make contact. This idea is sometimes called the Great Filter. It proposes that there is a difficult stage in the progression from simple life to advanced technology, a barrier that most species fail to cross. The filter might occur early, during the transition from chemistry to biology, or late, when a civilization gains the power to destroy itself. Nuclear war, environmental collapse, or uncontrolled artificial intelligence could all represent potential filters. If this is true, humanity's survival is not guaranteed. We may still be approaching our own test. Some thinkers suggest the opposite. Perhaps the great filter lies behind us. Life on Earth may have passed through it already, surviving improbable hurdles such as the emergence of eukaryotic cells or the stabilization of multicellular organisms. If so, we might be one of the few lucky species to have made it through, standing almost alone in a galaxy of silent worlds. There are also explanations rooted in astrophysics. Cosmic timescales are vast, and civilizations may not overlap in time. The window during which a species can communicate may be short, a few thousand years at most, compared to the age of the galaxy. Two civilizations might exist millions of years apart, missing each other entirely. The night sky could be full of worlds that once thrived with life, but have since faded into geological quiet. Another hypothesis considers distance and energy. The Milky Way is about 100,000 light years across. Even if civilizations are scattered throughout, the gaps between them are immense. Sending physical probes or even messages across such distances requires enormous resources and patience. A message from another world might still be traveling toward us, crossing the interstellar void at the speed of light, destined to arrive thousands of years from now. A different perspective is the zoo hypothesis, the idea that advanced civilizations are aware of us but choose not to interfere, much like zookeepers observing animals without disturbing their environment. According to this view, humanity might be under a form of cosmic quarantine, allowed to develop naturally until it reaches a level of maturity capable of contact. While unprovable, the concept highlights how our expectations are shaped by our own behaviors and values. Some scientists suggest that extraterrestrial civilizations may exist primarily as machine intelligences. Over long timescales, biological life might give way to artificial systems better suited for space. These entities could operate on different timescales, perhaps entering long periods of dormancy between bursts of activity. If they use little energy or emit no detectable radiation, we might never notice them. They could exist quietly, conserving power, waiting for signals or events of interest, a kind of cosmic hibernation that leaves no trace for us to see. Another consideration is self-restraint. Perhaps advanced civilizations choose sustainability over expansion. On Earth, we often imagine progress as growth, but on a cosmic scale, endless expansion may be neither practical nor necessary. A civilization capable of harnessing the energy of its own star, a Type 2 civilization on the Kardashev scale, would have little incentive to travel interstellar distances. Instead, it might live in perfect equilibrium, invisible to our current instruments, producing minimal waste or detectable emissions. Technological civilizations could also camouflage themselves for safety. If the universe contains not only peaceful species, but also potential threats, discretion might be wise. Broadcasting one's location could invite unwanted attention. In this dark forest hypothesis, civilizations remain silent not because they are absent, but because they fear detection. Every world might be listening quietly, avoiding risk, a cosmic standstill, maintained by mutual caution. There are even possibilities that reach beyond conventional physics. Some researchers have speculated that civilizations may migrate to environments we cannot yet observe, into the outer galaxy, into virtual realities, or into dimensions beyond our current understanding. Others suggest that life could exist in forms that do not interact with electromagnetic radiation in familiar ways, rendering them invisible to us. Each of these ideas, from rarity to silence, from destruction to transcendence, addresses one aspect of the paradox. None can yet be proven, but together they form a spectrum of possibilities that reflect both the fragility and resilience of life. The Fermi paradox is less a single question than a mirror for our curiosity. Why do we expect company, and what would it mean if we never find it? For now, the data remain consistent with two extremes. Either we are one of countless civilizations, separated by time and distance, or we are the first or the last in a galaxy still waiting for others to awaken. Both possibilities are equally humbling. From a scientific standpoint, the search continues. Projects such as SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, use radio telescopes to listen for narrow-band signals that could indicate technology. The Breakthrough Listen initiative extends this effort, scanning billions of frequencies across thousands of stars. Meanwhile, astronomers also search for technosignatures, indirect evidence of technology, such as unusual heat patterns, artificial light, or chemical pollutants in exoplanet atmospheres. So far, no confirmed detections have been made, but each new instrument expands our reach. The silence of the cosmos does not imply emptiness. It may simply reflect our infancy as observers. Humanity has been listening for only a few decades, an instant compared to cosmic history. The galaxy is vast, and the speed of light is slow. We might still be waiting for an echo that began long before our species learned to listen. There is a quiet poignancy in that thought. Perhaps the universe is filled with civilizations, each separated by time, each looking into the dark with the same question. Or perhaps we are alone, a single spark of awareness in an indifferent cosmos. Either way, the search itself defines us. To ask where everyone is, and to keep listening despite the silence, is itself an act of hope. From this point, our exploration moved forward to those who continue to listen, the scientists, observatories, and projects dedicated to detecting signals from beyond. In the next chapter, we turn to SETI and the listening sky, the ongoing effort to hear a whisper, if one exists, across the vast quiet of space. For as long as humans have looked up at the night sky, we have wondered whether someone might be looking back. That question, ancient, simple, and vast, lies at the heart of one of the most ambitious scientific endeavors of our time, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Our SETI, built on patience and precision, it reflects our hope that somewhere among the stars, another civilization is transmitting across the cosmic dark. SETI began in the mid-20th century with the birth of radio astronomy. Scientists realized that Earth's own broadcasts, radar, television, and communication signals were leaking into space. If we could unintentionally send signals outward, perhaps others had done the same. In 1959, physicists Giuseppe Cocconi and Philip Morrison suggested listening near the 1,420 MHz hydrogen line, a universal frequency any advanced species might recognize. A year later, Frank Drake launched Project Ozma, tuning a radio telescope toward two sun-like stars. He heard only static, but humanity had taken its first deliberate step toward listening. Drake soon created the Drake equation, estimating how many detectable civilizations might exist. It shifted the search from speculation to measurable science. Over the following decades, optimism and skepticism alternated. Ambitious ideas like Project Cyclops, a vast array of radio dishes, were never built, yet smaller surveys continued, expanding from single stars to whole sections of sky as computing power grew. In 1974, scientists at Arecibo Observatory sent humanity's first message to the stars, a binary code toward the globular cluster M13, containing simple data about DNA, our solar system, and humanity. Around the same time, the Voyager Golden Record carried greetings, sounds, and music into deep space, not to start a dialogue, but to symbolize curiosity, a quiet statement that we are listeners as well as explorers. SETI today spans many methods. Radio SETI still dominates, searching for narrow-band signals unlike any natural emission. Optical SETI uses telescopes to detect brief, bright laser pulses that could cross interstellar distances. Others focus on technosignatures, indirect traces of technology, such as waste heat, artificial gases, or unusual light patterns. In 2015, attention briefly turned to Tabby's star, whose strange dimming led some to imagine vast structures before dust proved a simpler explanation. Such moments remind scientists that SETI's strength lies in disciplined curiosity. The largest current effort, Breakthrough Listen, surveys 1 million nearby stars using the world's most sensitive radio telescopes. Petabytes of data are analyzed through machine learning and volunteer computing via SETI at home, turning thousands of personal computers into one global observatory. Despite decades of listening, an O-confirmed signal has been found. Yet silence is also data. Each null result narrows the possibilities. We now know that if others broadcast, they do so briefly, faintly, or on frequencies we have yet to reach. The search refines itself with every quiet sky. SETI has become increasingly interdisciplinary, blending astronomy, data science, linguistics, and philosophy. It has also broadened its timescale. Any message we detect will have traveled for years or centuries, its senders perhaps long gone. Communication across light years is less a conversation than an exchange between eras. Still, to detect even an echo of intelligence would prove that life's story extends beyond Earth. Some critics see little reward in so uncertain a quest. Supporters reply that SETI's value lies not only in discovery, but in perspective. It advances signal analysis, inspires technology, and reminds us that listening itself is a form of knowledge, a discipline of paying attention. Even when no one answers, there is also a moral question. If we detect a message, should we respond? The METI initiative, Messaging Extraterrestrial Intelligence, explores cautious ways to communicate, while most scientists advise restraint. For now, listening feels wiser than calling out into the dark dot in essence. SETI is humanity's most patient experiment. It unfolds on cosmic timescales, with progress measured in understanding rather than discovery. Perhaps one day a faint, patterned signal will emerge, or perhaps the silence will continue. Either outcome deepens our sense of place. Not to build machines that listen across light years is to express who we are, beings capable of curiosity, attention, and hope. The stars remain silent, yet our ability to understand them grows with every generation. Somewhere in that vast quiet, the answer may already be on its way. If contact ever comes, it will probably not arrive with the drama of a spacecraft descending from the sky. It is far more likely to begin as a pattern in data, a faint, repeating signal within the steady hum of cosmic noise. In that instant, the greatest question humanity has ever asked would move from philosophy to measurement. How would we recognize such a moment, and what would follow? Most scientists agree that the first evidence of another civilization would appear as a narrow band, electromagnetic signal detected by radio telescopes. Natural sources, pulsars, quasars, interstellar gas, emit over wide frequency ranges. A transmission confined to a single stable frequency would stand out as artificial. The challenge lies in separating such a tone from interference created by Earth itself, satellites, radar, and countless human devices. For this reason, SETI observatories monitor specific frequency ranges, known as the quiet band, between about 1 and 10 gigahertz, where cosmic noise is minimal, and hydrogen emissions provide a natural reference. Within this spectrum, a genuine extraterrestrial transmission would likely reveal itself as a repeating, narrow signal with a Doppler drift consistent with planetary rotation. Modern receivers record billions of channels simultaneously, searching for these tiny deviations. If a candidate signal appears, the first rule is verification. No one announces contact after a single detection. The data would be reobserved using multiple telescopes at different locations to rule out local interference. Independent teams would analyze the same frequency, checking whether the signal persists when the telescope points away from the target. Most apparent anomalies disappear at this stage. Satellites, reflections, or software artifacts explain nearly all of them. Yet if the signal remained fixed on a star and showed no terrestrial origin, the investigation would deepen. SETI protocols established by the International Academy of Astronautics outline clear steps for such an event. Once a credible detection is made, it must be shared immediately with the global scientific community for confirmation. The discovery team would not keep it secret or claim ownership. Transparency ensures credibility, and the open exchange of data prevents misunderstandings. The process would unfold slowly, methodically, in full public view. The signal itself could take many forms. It might be a simple continuous wave, a series of pulses encoding mathematical sequences like prime numbers, or a narrow burst repeating at regular intervals. Some scientists expect beacons, transmissions designed to be easily recognized, perhaps anchored to universal constants such as the hydrogen line at 1.420 gigahertz. Others imagine more complex messages, structured bursts conveying information, or modulated carriers embedding visual or linguistic patterns. Whatever its content, the first step would be to confirm that the modulation is non-random and not of human origin. Once verified, attention would turn to decoding. If the transmission contained information, teams of linguists, mathematicians, and computer scientists would analyze its structure. The goal would not be translation in the traditional sense, but identifying patterns of logic, repetition, and hierarchy. On Earth, all languages and codes share statistical properties, frequencies of symbols, symmetry, and redundancy. These features might allow recognition of meaning, even without understanding the message itself. To maintain caution, scientists would avoid sending replies immediately. The post-detection protocols recommend that no response be transmitted until broad international consultation occurs. Questions of representation, security, and ethics would be discussed at the level of the United Nations and scientific bodies like the International Astronomical Union. The guiding principle is restraint. Listen first. Understand second. Act last. History offers smaller rehearsals of such a moment. In 1977, the Ohio State University Radio Observatory recorded the famous WOW signal, a strong narrow band burst lasting 72 seconds. It matched many characteristics of an artificial transmission, but was never repeated or confirmed. Decades later, it remains an intriguing mystery, a reminder that genuine detections must survive rigorous testing. Similar events have occurred since, each eventually traced to human interference. Through them, SETI has learned caution, patience, and the importance of statistical certainty. If a confirmed signal were ever announced, its immediate impact would likely be scientific rather than social. Within hours, observatories around the world would repoint their instruments to verify it. Data would pour in: signal strength, drift rate, periodicity, and location. Researchers would estimate the distance to the source, often by identifying the host star from which the signal originated. If it came from within a few hundred light years, we could infer its age, every bit of information representing years of travel through space. A message detected today might have been sent centuries ago, by beings long vanished or perhaps still there. Waiting for an answer, governments and media would inevitably take notice, but the initial tone would be analytical. Unlike a sudden event in the sky, a radio signal carries no physical risk. Its meaning lies in interpretation, not in threat. The conversation would likely unfold across decades, shaped by careful observation rather than urgency. Communication over interstellar distances would be constrained by the speed of light. Even the nearest star system, Proxima Centauri, lies over 4 years away. A round-trip exchange would take nearly a decade. Most potential civilizations are hundreds or thousands of light years distant, making any dialogue slower than human history itself. The practical reality is that first contact, in the communicative sense, would be one-sided. We would listen, perhaps understand, but receive no immediate reply. In that sense, first contact would be an encounter with the past. Each photon carries the timestamp of its departure. Each bit of data tells us what the senders were long ago. They might already have changed beyond recognition or ceased to exist. Still, their message would endure, a fossil of intelligence preserved in electromagnetic form. Decoding such a message would demand humility. Its contents might be purely symbolic, a demonstration of knowledge rather than a conversation. Many scientists suspect that any civilization choosing to broadcast would aim for clarity through universality. Mathematics, physics, or chemistry. Numbers, atomic constants, or geometric sequences could bridge biological and cultural divides. Even without translation, recognition itself, the realization that another mind once shaped this signal, would be enough to redefine our place in the cosmos. The psychological and cultural effects of detection would unfold gradually. Public curiosity would surge, accompanied by reflection rather than panic. Surveys suggest that most people expect the discovery of alien life within this century and view it with fascination rather than fear. Religions, philosophers, and artists would reinterpret the event through their own lenses. Humanity's sense of isolation would diminish, replaced by a subtle awareness of continuity, that thought and curiosity are not unique to us. In parallel, governments would form committees to coordinate study and communication policy. The United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs already maintains working groups addressing the handling of extraterrestrial contact. Scientific institutions like NASA and the European Space Agency have drafted preliminary guidelines emphasizing transparency, data sharing, and peaceful intent. The process would likely evolve into an international collaboration, balancing openness with responsibility. While most experts advocate passive listening, some propose active SETI, sending deliberate messages to nearby star systems. Projects such as Cosmic Call and A Message from Earth have already transmitted brief greetings using powerful radio arrays. These efforts remain controversial. Supporters argue that broadcasting reflects humanity's curiosity and willingness to connect. Critics caution that revealing our location could expose us to unknown risks. For now, active transmission remains limited and symbolic, while passive listening continues as the main scientific approach. The first confirmed detection would also transform science itself. It would validate the field of astrobiology, provide new parameters for life's frequency, and influence how we design future missions. Instruments might be redirected to study the sender's planetary system, searching for atmospheric clues or artificial structures. The event would shape funding priorities, educational programs, and even international law. Over time, the discovery would become integrated into human culture, as natural and accepted as the realization that Earth orbits the Sun. If contact occurs, it may not answer our questions immediately. The message could be too complex, too brief, or too old to interpret fully. But its existence alone would prove that intelligence can endure, that somewhere, at least once, consciousness reached outward. The emotional resonance of that knowledge would be quiet rather than dramatic. A collective pause, a widening of perspective. There is something almost meditative about imagining that moment. A pattern emerges in the static, faint, regular, deliberate. Instruments confirm it, data accumulate, and analysis replaces wonder with understanding. Humanity, for the first time, knows it is not alone. The sky, once silent, now carries a whisper from another mind. From here, the next step in our exploration turns inward as much as outward. How such a discovery would reshape humanity itself, our science, and philosophy. The confirmation of extraterrestrial intelligence would be one of the most profound moments in human history. Yet it would likely unfold not as a single shockwave, but as a gradual transformation, a shift in how humanity sees itself and its place in the universe. The impact of such a discovery would ripple through every aspect of civilization: science, culture, religion, philosophy, and a quiet inner sense of what it means to be alive on a small planet, circling an ordinary star dot. To understand these potential effects, scientists and sociologists have spent decades studying how humans respond to paradigm-changing events. Their findings suggest that the first reaction would not be panic, as often imagined in fiction, but reflection. The discovery of intelligent life beyond Earth would not threaten our safety directly. There would be no invasion, no sudden encounter, only information. A signal traveling for centuries to reach us poses no physical risk, yet carries immense psychological weight. In 2015, NASA and the Library of Congress convened a workshop on preparing for discovery. Participants from astronomy, theology, anthropology, and communication studies explored how humanity might react. Their consensus was strikingly calm. Across cultures and belief systems, curiosity outweighed fear. Most people, they predicted, would greet the news with wonder rather than anxiety, a validation of something long suspected rather than a disruption. The discovery would expand perspective, not collapse it. At the scientific level, confirmation of extraterrestrial intelligence would mark a new era. It would demonstrate that life, and perhaps consciousness, is a cosmic phenomenon, not an earthly anomaly. Astrobiology, already growing rapidly, would become a central discipline. Researchers would focus on understanding the biology, chemistry, and evolution of the detected civilization's world. A study of life would no longer be confined to one planet, but would become an interstellar science. Astronomy and physics would also shift in focus. If we detected a signal, we would know at least one other technological species exists. That alone would influence theories about the frequency of civilizations, refining parameters in the Drake equation, redefining the boundaries of probability. The discovery would validate decades of SETI work and encourage the construction of new instruments to listen more deeply, across more frequencies and greater distances. In technology, the implications could be equally transformative. Even a simple signal, a sequence of mathematical patterns, or a brief transmission might demonstrate technologies or energy levels beyond our current understanding. If we could interpret even fragments of the message, it might contain concepts in physics or engineering that would take generations to comprehend. Scientists would approach such data cautiously, aware that meaning could be lost in translation. Still, the mere existence of a transmission capable of traveling light years intact would prove that interstellar communication is achievable, altering our long-term ambitions for space exploration. But the greatest changes would occur in the human perspective, the quiet internal shift in how we see ourselves. For millennia, humanity has oscillated between two views: that we are unique and central, and that we are one among many. Every major astronomical discovery, from Copernicus to Hubble, has moved us further from the center of the cosmos. The discovery of intelligent life would complete that journey. We would know that thought, curiosity, and self-awareness are not confined to Earth, that the universe is not a stage built only for us, but a network of potential observers. Sociologists often compare this to the Copernican principle, the idea that our position in the universe is not privileged. In the same way that Earth was once removed from the center of the solar system, humanity would be removed from the center of intelligence itself. Yet rather than diminishing us, this realization could bring a sense of connection, a widening of belonging. Just as early explorers discovered new continents on Earth, we would be discovering our own continuity with a larger community of life. Religious scholars have long debated how faith traditions would respond to such news. Historical evidence suggests that major religions have been remarkably adaptive to scientific discovery. The idea of life beyond Earth has already been addressed by theologians in Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. Many view the possibility of other beings as an extension of creation rather than a contradiction of it. In this view, the cosmos is vast enough to include multiple expressions of divine creativity. For others, the discovery would deepen the sense of mystery, the awareness that existence transcends human understanding. Still, there would be philosophical questions without easy answers. Would we consider extraterrestrial intelligence part of humanity's moral circle? Could empathy extend across species, even across light years? Would the discovery humble us or inspire competition, a race to match the capabilities of others? Psychologists suggest that both reactions are possible. In some, contact would evoke humility and solidarity. In others, curiosity and ambition. The balance between those emotions would shape how civilization adapts. Economically and politically, the initial effects might be subtle. Markets respond to uncertainty, but a distant signal would not alter daily life. Governments might establish new research agencies, perhaps similar to the early space race institutions, yet driven by collaboration rather than rivalry. Over time, the discovery could encourage international unity. Facing a shared reality beyond Earth tends to reduce internal divisions, at least temporarily. A global awareness of being part of a cosmic ecosystem could strengthen cooperation in addressing planetary challenges such as climate, resources, and sustainability. Education would change as well. Textbooks would be rewritten, not with panic, but with perspective. The story of life on Earth would now be one chapter in a broader narrative. Students might learn about communication protocols, exoplanetary science, and the ethics of interstellar dialogue. The humanities, literature, art, and philosophy would absorb the event as a new theme, exploring what it means to share existence with unknown minds. One area that would see particular growth is astroethics, the study of how humans should behave in relation to other civilizations. Questions about consent, non-interference, and cultural exchange would become relevant even across light years. Some ethicists propose guidelines similar to those in anthropology: observe respectfully, avoid harm, and acknowledge that we represent not only ourselves, but our entire species. At the psychological level, reactions would vary. For many, the knowledge would bring calm fascination. For others, existential unease. The vastness of space already inspires both wonder and a quiet sense of smallness. Knowing we are not alone could amplify both emotions. Some might feel comforted by the idea of a shared intelligence. Others might feel displaced, as though humanity's specialness had been diluted. History suggests, however, that such feelings settle into acceptance. The same pattern followed after earlier scientific revolutions: initial astonishment, public debate, gradual integration, and eventual normalcy. In cultural terms, the discovery would likely spark a renaissance of creativity. Music, literature, and film would explore the theme of connection, not invasion or fear, but understanding across unimaginable distances. Artists might reinterpret ancient myths in light of new knowledge, blending science and symbolism. In that sense, first contact would not end mystery. It would deepen it, giving new language to the human imagination. The pace of change would depend on the nature of the discovery. A confirmed signal with clear structure, but no message, might produce steady, measured reflection. A decoded transmission, if it contained knowledge or art, could trigger profound shifts in philosophy. But even the simplest confirmation, the knowledge that we are not alone, would ripple through time. Future generations might not remember the day of discovery itself, but they would grow up in a civilization permanently altered by it. In the long view, the discovery of another intelligence would mark a transition in human development. For the first time, we would see ourselves as participants in a broader story, a young species joining an ancient network of awareness. Our technological ambitions might become more patient, our environmental ethics more universal. Earth would be seen not only as home, but as one planet among many that carry life's potential. There is a quiet beauty in imagining that shift. Civilization, for all its conflicts and noise, would pause to look outward together. The same telescopes that once searched for distant worlds would become instruments of connection. We might feel smaller, but also more complete, like a child who, realizing the vastness of the world, no longer feels alone within it. Over decades, the discovery would weave itself into everyday thought. The idea of other minds among the stars would no longer be extraordinary. it would become part of the background understanding of existence, much as the knowledge of galaxies or evolution is today. Humanity's attention would slowly turn from the novelty of the event to the quiet work of learning, deciphering messages, studying planetary systems, and exploring what intelligence means in cosmic terms. In the calm that follows such knowledge, the universe would feel a little less silent, and the night sky a little more familiar. From the molecules that form our cells to the stars that forge their elements, life on Earth is not isolated. It is an expression of processes that began long before our planet existed, a continuation of cosmic chemistry, spanning billions of years. When we speak of the universality of biology, we describe not a single template repeated across worlds, but a deeper connection, the shared physics and chemistry that make life possible anywhere in the universe. Every organism is built from the few key elements: hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur. Their abundance is no accident. They are among the most common in the cosmos, forged inside stars and scattered by supernova. The iron in our blood and the oxygen we breathe once burned in stellar cores. Life, in this sense, is the universe becoming aware of itself through chemistry. Astrobiologists study how these elements interact under different conditions and find remarkable consistency. Across comets and interstellar clouds, the same organic molecules appear: amino acids, sugars, nucleobases. They form spontaneously wherever carbon and water coexist. Life's ingredients belong not to Earth, but to the universe itself. Evidence of this has grown for decades. The Murchison meteorite contained over 70 amino acids. Missions like Rosetta and Hayabusa 2 found similar compounds on comets and asteroids. Even in deep space, spectrographs detect organic molecules drifting between stars. These clouds, the nurseries of planets, pass chemistry forward as solar systems form. Each world inherits a molecular legacy billions of years old. Experiments like the Miller-Urey test showed that simple gases and energy can yield amino acids. Later work confirmed this under many conditions: lightning, radiation, hydrothermal vents. The boundary between non-living and living appears gradual, a continuum of complexity. If such chemistry is universal, life may be a natural outcome of cosmic evolution. On Earth, all life uses the same core biochemistry: DNA, proteins, and lipids. This suggests chemical logic rather than coincidence. Carbon's versatility, water's polarity, and stable molecular bonds may favor certain biological solutions everywhere. Life is shaped by physical law, an emergent property of matter. Under the right conditions, extreme life on Earth reinforces this view. Microbes thrive in radiation, acid, and deep ice. Their resilience widens the known limits of habitability, making life plausible on Mars, Europa, or distant exoplanets. By mapping how life adapts to temperature, pressure, and chemistry, scientists build models for alien ecosystems. Biology becomes a universal language, describing how matter organizes into living systems. This universality also reshapes how we define life. Between chemistry and consciousness lies a gradient: self-replicating molecules, networks, and emerging patterns. Life may not be a category, but a continuum, filled with transitional forms, attempts, successes, and remnants. Philosophically, this view suggests consciousness is not an anomaly, but a likely outcome of complexity. Matter that organizes into neurons here might do so elsewhere. Intelligence becomes another step in the universe's tendency toward awareness. Panspermia extends this idea. Life, or its seeds, may travel between worlds. Meteorites from Mars found on Earth contain structures hinting at microbial activity. Some microbes can survive years in space, protected within rock. If so, the cosmos may spread life naturally, linking worlds in an ongoing cycle of adaptation. There is quiet elegance in this view. The atoms that once formed stars now form eyes that look back at them. Life is the universe studying itself through temporary patterns of awareness. Discovery elsewhere would not be alien but familiar, a reflection of the same cosmic logic that shaped us. Wherever matter finds stability and energy flow, complexity tends to rise. The universe appears predisposed to life, not by miracle but by nature. Existence itself is continuity, energy, chemistry, and awareness moving through time. When we speak about the future of life, we are really speaking about the continuity of awareness, the ways in which matter organizes itself to perceive, learn, and remember. Humanity stands at an unusual moment in that continuum. For the first time, a species on one small planet can look outward and trace its origins from stardust to consciousness. The same curiosity that drives us to explore space is the latest expression of a much older process, the universe examining its own structure through living systems. In scientific terms, life is a form of complexity sustained by energy flow. Stars turn hydrogen into heavier elements. Planets collect that material. Organisms channel sunlight or chemistry into metabolism. Each step increases the diversity of patterns through which the cosmos maintains balance. From this viewpoint, humanity is not separate from the universe, but part of its thermodynamic evolution, a temporary concentration of order capable of reflecting on itself. This idea reshapes how we think about the future. Evolution is no longer confined to biological mutation and natural selection. It now includes technological evolution, the ability of life to extend itself through machines, data, and artificial systems. In the same way that early cells invented membranes to expand their possibilities, modern civilizations invent networks and tools to amplify cognition. Artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and planetary-scale computing are not departures from nature, but continuations of its adaptive logic. The question is not whether these developments will happen, but how they will integrate with the larger pattern of life in the universe. Some scientists describe this transition as the emergence of a planetary intelligence, a stage at which technological activity begins to interact with the biosphere as a single system. Earth's atmosphere already bears the imprint of industry. Satellites wrap the planet in a mesh of data. Collective human knowledge expands faster than any individual can follow. This global awareness is still primitive, fragmented, and often conflicting. Yet it hints at a new layer of organization, the biosphere, becoming self-aware through its inhabitants. If life exists elsewhere, similar transitions may occur across the galaxy. Civilizations might evolve from local adaptation to planetary stewardship, and eventually to forms of existence that transcend biology. Some could merge consciousness with technology, creating distributed intelligences sustained by energy rather than organic matter. Others might retreat inward, minimizing energy use and focusing on mental or virtual domains. The diversity of possible futures mirrors the diversity of life itself. From the perspective of cosmic timescales, these transitions unfold quickly. The universe is roughly 13.8 billion years old. Modern humans have existed for less than 0.1% of that time. Yet within a few centuries, we have developed tools capable of altering our planet and probing the depths of space. If other civilizations have undergone similar trajectories, most of them would be far older than ours. That asymmetry raises a question. Why do we not see them? This question, known as the Fermi paradox, remains one of the most intriguing puzzles in science. There are many possible answers. Perhaps intelligent life is rare. Perhaps it is common, but short-lived. Perhaps advanced civilizations choose not to transmit signals or communicate in ways we do not yet recognize. Some may exist on scales of time or technology beyond our comprehension. Entities that think in centuries, not seconds, or that use mediums other than electromagnetic waves. Whatever the explanation, the silence of the stars reminds us that awareness may be fragile, even on cosmic scales. That fragility places a responsibility on us. As a species capable of altering its environment, humanity now shapes the conditions of its own survival. Climate change, resource depletion, and the potential misuse of technology all pose challenges that extend beyond individual nations or generations. Yet these same capacities also allow us to protect, restore, and evolve consciously. The ability to reflect on our impact is itself a form of intelligence, one that may determine whether life continues to flourish here. Astrobiologists sometimes frame this as a test every civilization must face: the transition from growth to sustainability. A species that harnesses energy faster than its planet can replenish, it risks collapse. One that learns balance can persist for millennia. If we imagine the cosmos filled with life at different stages of this journey, and our task is not only to survive, but to mature, to integrate technology, ecology, and awareness into a stable whole. That integration may be the hallmark of advanced life anywhere. A civilization that endures must learn to manage planetary energy flows without destroying the systems that support it. On Earth, this might mean transforming our technologies to operate in harmony with climate and biology, turning industrial metabolism into ecological metabolism. In the distant future, it could mean guiding the evolution of other worlds, cultivating ecosystems beyond Earth, or even spreading the seeds of life to sterile planets. In this sense, the continuation of life becomes both a scientific and ethical project. The cosmic web that binds galaxies together offers a model for this perspective. It shows that everything, from stars to atoms, is interconnected through gravity, energy, and time. Life adds another layer of connection: awareness. Each organism, each civilization, is a node in a vast network of matter becoming self-reflective. Our role is small in scale, but large in meaning, because through us the universe becomes capable of understanding itself, at least in one place. The future of awareness, then, may not lie in domination or expansion, but in integration. Instead of spreading outward indefinitely, intelligence may turn inward, seeking efficiency, harmony, and continuity. Some thinkers propose that advanced civilizations might eventually reduce their energy consumption, slow their activity, and merge with digital or quantum substrates, not extinction, but transformation into quieter forms of existence. Others imagine interstellar networks exchanging information rather than matter, creating a galaxy-wide ecology of knowledge. Both visions share a common theme: that awareness adapts to its environment as naturally as biology adapts to climate. Just as early life learned to use sunlight, future intelligences may learn to use information itself as a medium of survival. In that sense, consciousness becomes the latest phase of cosmic evolution, as fundamental as gravity or light, but expressed through pattern rather than substance. Within this vast framework, humanity's achievements and conflicts appear small yet meaningful. Our art, science, and empathy are local expressions of universal tendencies: order emerging from chaos, cooperation from competition, understanding from curiosity. The same forces that sculpt galaxies also shape the dynamics of human thought. Recognizing that continuity can bring a quiet humility, the awareness that while we are transient, we participate in something enduring. If we imagine the far future, billions of years from now, the sun will expand, and Earth will no longer be habitable. Yet by then, life may have spread beyond this planet, whether through human descendants, artificial consciousness, or microbial forms carried on spacecraft. The lineage of Earth could continue. The atoms that once composed oceans and forests might circulate through other worlds, beginning new cycles of awareness. In that distant era, the story of life will not be ours alone, but part of a shared cosmic narrative. Such thoughts are not speculation for their own sake. They remind us that the choices made now, how we treat our planet, how we use our technologies, how we define intelligence, shape the trajectory of life far beyond the present. Every act of understanding contributes to a legacy measured not in generations, but in epochs. Perhaps this is what the search for life beyond Earth ultimately teaches, that the universe is not silent, but subtle, speaking through patterns of matter and time. Awareness is not imposed upon it, but arises naturally within it, like ripples on a vast, calm ocean. To see ourselves as part of that ocean is to find perspective, not to feel small, but to recognize connection. Our place in the cosmic web is neither central nor insignificant. We are one thread in an immense tapestry, woven from the same particles that form stars and planets, animated by the same laws that guide galaxies. What distinguishes us is the ability to reflect, to care, and to imagine futures yet unseen. If life continues to evolve, those capacities may spread outward, linking worlds through shared curiosity. In that long view, the purpose of intelligence may not be conquest or survival alone, but understanding, the slow unfolding of awareness across space and time. As our telescopes reach farther and our minds grow quieter, we begin to see the outline of that larger story. Life is not an exception to the universe. It is its continuation. And consciousness, fragile yet persistent, is how the universe remembers itself. Thank you for sharing this quiet journey through the universe with a sleepy brain dose. If this calm exploration brought you peace or wonder, you can gently like the video, subscribe, or share your thoughts below. Your curiosity keeps these soft stories alive. Until next time, sleep well, stay curious, and keep listening to the silence between the stars.